Chapter 2549. White Dragon's arrogant wish was soon realized. The 6 heaven-defying battleships locked onto the Tianqing battleship and shot out hundreds of dark red light pillars. Bang! 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 Dark red pillars of light that were as dense as raindrops landed on the Skyline battleship one after another, producing deafening booms. Suddenly the Tianqing battleship was engulfed by the endless red light. However, the battleship only shook a few times and did not have any wounds or dents on its surface. On the other hand, the hundreds of dark red light pillars collapsed one after another, splashing out shards that blotted out the sky. This result shocked the heaven-defying battleships. The heaven-defying elites looked at each other and did not know what to do. White Dragon was getting more and more excited. He laughed in high spirits. "Ha! Too weak. You bunch of trash, are you trying to scratch my itch?" As he spoke, he drove the Tianqing battleship at maximum speed. He turned into a black shadow and charged toward the few battleships in front of him. Boom! 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 3 loud bangs were heard. The 3 heaven-defying battleships that were lined up side by side were immediately pierced by the candied hawthorn. They were broken into pieces by the Tianqing battleship. Hundreds of black-armored warriors and the 3 silver-armored captains were blown away by the violent impact, falling into the void in a mess. The Tianqing battleship smashed 3 heaven-defying battleships in a row before the impact was offset and its speed slowed down. White Dragon turned back and accelerated toward the chaotic crowd in an invincible and violent manner. Bang! 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 More than 100 black-armored soldiers could not dodge in time and were smashed into pieces by the Tianqing battleship. They died instantly. Even the heaven-defying battleships who were brushed by the battleship were sent flying and vomiting blood. White Dragon laughed proudly and drove the Tianqing battleship into the heaven-defying battleship. He was extremely arrogant and domineering. At the front, White Dragon drove the battleship into the heaven-defying battleship. At the back, Ji Tianqing, Lan Kun, Qian Yu and Black Dragon massacred the heaven-defying battleships in the void and killed many silver-armored captains. Soon the heaven-conquering fleet fell into chaos, and it was difficult for them to take care of the front and rear. At the forefront of the fleet, there was a black battleship that was 2,000 feet long. Its body was exceptionally ferocious and domineering. This was the flagship of the fleet's leader, General Guti. Originally, General Guti's flagship was responsible for attacking the Sirius Star. The gap in the silver barrier was torn open by this ship. General Guti was confident of victory. She thought that she could charge into the Sirius Star within 2 hours. He never would have thought that someone would come and cause trouble at such a crucial moment, causing the entire fleet to be in disarray. He flew into a rage and immediately ordered them to stop attacking the Sirius Star and turn around to deal with the mysterious battleship that had suddenly intruded. "Fire! Destroy it for me!" General Guti angrily gave the order, her body bursting with killing intent. The flagship immediately unleashed 200 crimson light beams, which blasted towards the Tianqing battleship thousands of miles away. Even though the Tianqing battleship was huge like a moving mountain. However, its speed was extremely fast like a phantom and it appeared to be exceptionally nimble. Boom 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 boom. The 200 light beams tore through the void, but more than half of them were dodged by the Tianqing battleship. The remaining 60 light beams struck the Tianqing battleship, but they did not cause much damage. The Tianqing battleship was completely unharmed. There was not even a dent on its surface, and its defensive divine array was not broken. Seeing this, General Guti's eyes widened in anger and disbelief. How is this possible? Where did that battleship come from? How can it block the attack of my flagship? Pass down my order. All battleships stop attacking the Sirius Star and surround that mysterious battleship first. We must destroy it. As his order was passed down, hundreds of battleships adjusted their direction and formed a circle with a radius of 20,000 miles, surrounding the Tianqing battleship. Endless dark red light beams poured down on the Tianqing battleship like a torrential rain. Inside the battleship, Bai Long put away his smug and joking expression. His expression became as calm as water and a cold smile appeared on his lips. "Haha, you want to use the encirclement tactic to destroy me first before attacking the Sirius Star? Then I'll play with you a bunch of iron dolls." As he sneered, he formed a divine seal with both hands and continuously shot out dense golden light to control the battleship's divine array. Whoosh! The Tianqing battleship's speed reached the maximum. It turned into a black phantom and sped through the void. The phantom was erratic and flashed, sometimes moving forward, sometimes retreating, and the next moment, it turned around and swung its tail. As a result, it dodged most of the dark red light beams shot out by the hundreds of battleships. Even if a small portion of the light beams hit it, they could not break its defensive divine array, let alone stop it from moving. However, the heaven-conquering battleships immediately suffered. Bam 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 bam. As a series of loud noises exploded, one battleship after another was hit by the Tianqing battleship. Some battleships were smashed into pieces and twisted out of shape. Some of the battleships were smashed into two halves. Some battleships were hit by the Tianqing battleship from the abdomen and directly split open. All in all, the Tianqing battleship was like an extremely agile fish that swam freely in the sea. Nothing could stop it. However, this fish was extremely sturdy and had infinite strength. If this fish was made of steel, then the dozens of heaven-conquering battleships were made of paper. This encirclement battle lasted for a few minutes before it was over. The Tianqing battleship was unscathed, but the heaven-conquering battleship was confused and suffered heavy losses. A total of more than 50 battleships were destroyed. Thousands of black-armored soldiers and dozens of silver-armored captains were not spared. They were quickly killed by Ji Tianqing and the three divine beasts. This result caused General Guti to break down on the spot. He could not believe that there was such a heaven-defying battleship in the Purple Cloud Galaxy. In his grief and anger, he could only suppress the humiliation and rage in his heart and give the order to retreat. The 40 battleships that were lucky enough to survive turned around and flew into the depths of the void, fleeing in panic. However, General Guti soon discovered that it was wishful thinking for the fleet to successfully retreat. The more than 30 powerhouses guarding the Sirius Star were in high spirits. They took the initiative to rush into the void and chase after the heaven-conquering battleship. The Tianqing battleship Ji Tianqing and the three divine beasts did not give up. They destroyed one heaven-conquering battleship after another along the way. The two sides chased each other in the void for 100,000 miles. More than 30 of the 40 battleships that were lucky enough to survive were destroyed. The black-armored soldiers and captains were also killed by Ji Tianqing and the powerhouses of the Sirius Star tribe. General Guti knew that the situation was hopeless. In his fury, he gave up on escaping. He personally steered his battleship and turned around to charge toward the Tianqing battleship. Even if he died, he would drag the other party down with him. Boom. Crack. The two giants did not avoid each other. They collided head-on with a loud explosion that shook the void. Chapter 2550. A destructive shockwave spread through the void. General Guti's flagship was smashed into pieces, sending thousands of pieces flying everywhere. The wreckage of countless battleships flew into the void with a terrifying force. A huge storm was born, sweeping through tens of thousands of miles. The 200 black-armored warriors in the warship were instantly smashed to pieces and died. General Guti and the three captains were also severely injured. They were wrapped in the wreckage of the warship and scattered in the void. Before the three captains could react, Lan Kuan, Qian Yu and Black Dragon pounced forward and killed them. General Guti endured his injuries and flew out of the wreckage, trying to escape into the depths of the void. However, Ji Tianqing caught up to him and held him back. Soon, a few serious elites rushed over and joined forces to attack General Guti. After more than 10 moves, General Guti died under Ji Tianqing's sword. Not only was his body destroyed, but even his divine soul was shattered. The battle ended and everyone in the heaven-conquering fleet was killed. Ji Tianqing put away the sword of burial of heaven and was about to turn and leave. At this moment, the huge silver-white Sirius elite led many Sirius elites and flew in front of Ji Tianqing. "Brave warrior, please wait." The leader of the Sirius elites looked at Ji Tianqing with a gentle gaze. He crossed his arms and covered his shoulders as he bowed to Ji Tianqing. The 20 or so Sirius experts behind him also bowed and paid their respects to Ji Tianqing. Even though everyone's injuries were very miserable, their bodies were covered in blood and many of their bodies were crippled. However, everyone's expression and eyes were filled with the joy of surviving a calamity, as well as deep gratitude. However, they spoke in the Sirius language. Ji Tianqing frowned and thought for a moment before he understood what they meant. He turned to look at the leader of the Sirius elites and asked unhurriedly in the somewhat unfamiliar Sirius language, "Is there anything else?" Seeing that he could speak the language of the Sirius clan, many of the Sirius clan's experts were pleasantly surprised, and their attitude towards him became even more intimate. The leader of the Celestial Wolf tribe nodded at Ji Tianqing and said with a smile, "Warrior, I am the Celestial Lord of the Celestial Wolf Star. My people call me the Celestial Wolf God. What I am ashamed of is that as the guardian of the Sirius Star, I was unable to stop the invasion of the Heaven Punishers and caused countless casualties among my people. Fortunately, you helped and destroyed the Heaven attacking fleet in General Guti. Otherwise, the Sirius Star would have fallen today. I and the 28 Constellation Guards will also perish under the bombardment of the Heaven-destroying fleet. You have saved me and the Sirius Star. Such kindness is higher than the sky and deeper than the sea. I sincerely invite you to the Sirius Star as a guest to express our gratitude." After hearing this, Ji Tianqing learned that the strongest and most imposing expert was known as the Heavenly Wolf God. The Celestial Wolf tribe experts behind him, who were at the first and second level of the Martial God realm, were known as the 28 Constellation Guards. Ji Tianqing roughly understood that the 28 Constellation Guards were most likely there to assist the Heavenly Wolf God and protect the Sirius Star. He shook his head and said calmly, "Heavenly Wolf God, you don't have to be so polite. I was just passing by and saw that the Heaven attacking star was attacking the Sirius Star. In fact, I also have a blood feud with the Heaven attacking star. Even if the Heaven attacking star did not attack the Sirius Star, as long as I encountered them, they would definitely die. There's no need to thank me. I still have matters to attend to." When they heard Ji Tianqing's words, the Heavenly Wolf God and the Constellation Guards felt even more cordial toward him. They felt as if they shared a common enemy. Therefore, the Heavenly Wolf God was even more unwilling to let Ji Tianqing leave. "Warrior, since you are also at odds with the Heaven attacking star, we are in the same boat. We should form an alliance and help each other. Now, the Heaven attacking star has invaded the Purple Cloud Star and is vainly trying to control the entire star field. They are wantonly attacking the various major worlds. Warrior, we sincerely beg you to stay for a few days and rest on the Sirius Star." Then the Heavenly Wolf God and the 28 Constellation Guards crossed their arms and covered their shoulders. They bowed to Ji Tianqing and refused to get up. Ji Tianqing knew that this was one of the highest forms of courtesy the Heavenly Wolf tribe had. Since the other party was so sincere, he couldn't refuse. Moreover, the Heavenly Wolf God's words reminded him of something. Therefore, after some consideration, he nodded and agreed. "All right, since you are so sincere in your invitation, I cannot refuse your kind intentions." The Heavenly Wolf God and the Constellation Guards were overjoyed and quickly got up. "Warrior, please gather your companions. Let's enter the Sirius Star together." The Heavenly Wolf God pointed at the Tianqing battleship and the 3 divine beasts that were still cleaning up the battlefield in the distance. Ji Tianqing nodded and used his divine soul to summon the White Dragon and the 3 divine beasts. The 3 divine beasts hurriedly returned to the battleship. The White Dragon steered the Tianqing battleship toward Ji Tianqing. Seizing this opportunity, the Heavenly Wolf God asked Ji Tianqing, "Warrior, may I know your title?" Ji Tianqing calmly replied, "Tianqing." The Heavenly Wolf God bowed again and said respectfully, "Greetings, true God Tianqing." The 28 Constellation Guards also bowed and greeted him in unison. Clearly, no one could tell Ji Tianqing's cultivation level. After witnessing his powerful techniques, they all believed that he was a true God expert. After all, only a true God expert could split the heaven-punishing battleship in half with a sword, kill the captain of the heaven-punishing battleship in an instant, and easily kill General Guti. Ji Tianqing only nodded and did not explain anything. In any case, although he was a peak martial god, his true combat strength was comparable to a third-level true god expert. There was nothing wrong with the Heavenly Wolf God and the others calling him a true god. Before long, the Tianqing battleship flew in front of everyone. Ji Tianqing turned and stepped into the battleship. The Heavenly Wolf God and the 28 Constellation Guards led the way and flew toward the Sirius Star. Swoosh! Everyone flew in front of the silver light barrier and passed through the huge gap, entering the Sirius Star. The White Dragon steered the Tianqing battleship and stopped in front of the gap. He was a little hesitant and asked Ji Tianqing via voice transmission, "Master, didn't you say that we were in a hurry? Why are we going to the Sirius Star as a guest?" Ji Tianqing said with a playful smile, "The Heavenly Wolf God sincerely invited me. It's hard to refuse." The White Dragon pursed his lips and chuckled. "Master, I know you too well. I'm afraid that's not the reason, right?" Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and asked, "Oh? Then tell me, what's the real reason?" The White Dragon answered without hesitation, "In my opinion, you saved the Sirius Star. The heavenly wolf god is grateful to you and will definitely think of a way to repay you. You don't care about resources and treasures, but you're worried about the five elements world. Coincidentally, the Sirius star is not far from the five elements world. If the five elements world is in danger, the Sirius star can help. You're really smart. Ji Tianxing's tone was indifferent as he said, "You know too much." Chapter 2551. After the battleship entered the Sirius star, it followed the Sirius god and the others through the sky. Follow under whom? A few hours later, the Sirius god and the others flew into a sea of clouds. This vast sea of clouds spanned 1,000,000 miles. It was as solid and flat as a continent. Neither the wind nor the scorching sun could move the sea of clouds. In the depths of the sea of clouds, there was a dazzling palace complex. It was especially sacred and majestic. Tianxing's battleship followed the Sirius god and the others and landed outside the sacred palace. Then the three divine beasts stayed in the battleship to rest. Ji Tianxing put away the battleship and stepped into the temple with the white dragon. This was the most sacred place of the Sirius star. It was called the Sirius Temple. The Sirius god and the 28 lunar mansion guards lived here all year round to protect the entire star. After entering the temple, the Sirius god dismissed the 28 lunar mansion guards and told them to retreat to recuperate. He endured his heavy injuries and received Ji Tianxing and the white dragon. Both parties took their seats in the majestic hall. Immediately, four beautiful and wild Sirius maids came to serve Ji Tianxing and the white dragon. Ji Tianxing was not interested in this. He waved his hand to signal the two maids to retreat and serve the white dragon. The four beautiful maids surrounded the white dragon. The white dragon's blood was boiling and his heart was itching. However, he pretended to be serious and kept a straight face, sitting upright and still. He waved his hand expressionlessly and dismissed the four maids. Ji Tianxing was amused when he saw this. He could not help but ask, "Isn't this what you want? How can you not be moved?" The white dragon replied seriously, "Master, how can you think like that? Am I that kind of person? I am learning your noble character. I will not be moved by beauty." Ji Tianxing could not be bothered to listen to his nonsense. He started chatting with the Sirius god. "Sirius god, when did the heaven destroyers start invading the Sirius star? I saw that the heaven destroyers had just torn open the Sirius star's defensive barrier. They had not entered the Sirius star yet." The Sirius god shook his head angrily and explained, "True god Tianxing, you might not know this, but the heaven destroyers are very cunning. As early as 3 years ago, a small fleet of heaven-destroying fleets had used secret techniques and special divine artifacts to break through the defensive shield of the Sirius star. There were more than 30 battleships in that fleet. They secretly invaded a continent and took control of the 4 divine kingdoms. A year ago, under the control of the Heaven Punisher race, the 4 divine kingdoms of that continent madly attacked another continent and slaughtered billions of martial practitioners and citizens. The Sirius god did not hide the truth and told Ji the Sirius god. He explained the entire story. After listening to his explanation, Ji Tianxing finally understood the whole story. It turned out that the Sirius star was different from the 5 elements world. It had 4 continents, more than a dozen divine kingdoms and more than 30 billion living beings. After the Heaven Punishers secretly took control of one continent, they crazily attacked another. Not long after, the Sirius god realized something was wrong and led the 28 lunar mansion guards to counterattack. They could not kill the Sirius race controlled by the heaven destroyers. After all, they were innocent. The Sirius god and the 28 lunar mansion guards could only search for the heaven destroyers and kill them one by one, destroying one heaven destroyer after another. But because of this, the Sirius god's hands were tied and he could not act decisively. The war lasted for half a year, causing the 2 continents to be destroyed. More than 10 billion warriors and civilians died. The Sirius god blamed himself for this. He called himself the sinner of the Sirius star and the disgrace of the Sirius gods. Even now he could not let it go. After the war ended, he thought the Sirius star was finally at peace. But soon he realized he was wrong. The greedy and overbearing heaven destroyers would not let the Sirius star go. Half a year ago, General Guti led a medium-sized heaven destroyer fleet to attack the Sirius star. This time there were more battleships and heaven destroyers. The Sirius star was caught off guard and could not resist. The Sirius god used all his means and gathered all the warriors of the Sirius star to resist the heaven destroyer fleet. In half a year, Dozens of martial gods of the Sirius star had died. Of the original 49 constellation guards, only 28 were left. As for the martial sage realm warriors of the Sirius race, hundreds of them had died. The Sirius star was at the end of its rope and had been forced into a corner. The battle in the starry sky had been the final battle. If Ji Tianqing had not appeared, the Sirius star would have been defeated. The Sirius god and the 28 lunar mansion guards would have died. As for the 30 billion people on the Sirius star, their fates were self-evident. That was why the Sirius god was so grateful to Ji Tianqing and saw him as the savior of the Sirius star. Ji Tianqing said angrily, "Sirius god, I can understand how you feel. A few years ago the 5 elements realm that I was in also suffered a similar calamity. An entire continent, 3 kingdoms and tens of billions of people were massacred by the Heaven Destroyer fleet. Corpse puppets were everywhere and blood flowed like a sea. However, no matter how powerful the Heaven Destroyer fleet is, we will not surrender. We did our best and paid a huge price and sacrificed a lot to destroy the Heaven Destroyer fleet and usher in a short period of peace." The Sirius god resonated strongly with him. However, he smiled bitterly and shook his head. He blamed himself and said, "True God Tianqing, the billions of people in the 5 elements realm are lucky to be under your protection. Unlike me, who was weak and could not even protect the people of the Sirius star and let them suffer so much." Ji Tianqing shook his head and said, "Sirius god, you don't have to blame yourself. You must pull yourself together. As long as the Heaven Destroyer fleet is not destroyed, the war will not truly end. Even if we win today, an even more powerful Heaven Destroyer fleet will invade the Sirius star soon." The Sirius god nodded and said, "True God Tianqing, I understand what you are saying. I have also prepared myself mentally. Now that the Sirius star is at the end of its rope, when that day comes, I will lead the 28 constellation guards and perish together with the Heaven Destroyer fleet." Ji Tianqing smiled and said, "You don't have to be so pessimistic. Things will take a turn for the better. However, the prerequisite is that we are not afraid of sacrificing ourselves and have the courage to fight to the death with the Heaven Destroyer fleet. There is something I have to tell you. The person who took over the Purple Cloud Star and tried to control the entire star field was the Heaven Destroyer fleet's Fleet Marshal Nan. 5 years ago, Fleet Marshal Nan personally led a fleet to invade the 5 elements realm, but we stopped him. The entire fleet was destroyed and only Fleet Marshal Nan was left. He was severely injured and fled back to the Purple Cloud Star. This time I have come to the Purple Cloud Star to kill Fleet Marshal Nan with my own hands. As long as I kill him, the main culprit, the crisis in the Purple Cloud Star field, will be resolved and we will have a long period of peace." The Heavenly Wolf God was shocked to the extreme when he heard the news. He stood up with a bang. His eyes widened as he roared in disbelief. "True God Tianqing, is what you said true?" Chapter 2552. The Heavenly Wolf God could not believe it. Marshal Nan, who had conquered Purple Cloud Planet, had personally led a fleet to invade the 5 elements world, but he had been seriously injured and had to flee? Moreover, True God Tianqing wanted to take the initiative to go to Purple Cloud Planet to seek revenge on Marshal Nan? Wasn't this too exaggerated? The Heavenly Wolf God was stunned for a long time before he recovered from his shock. He muttered with a face full of shame, "A mere General Gutti was able to occupy the Sirius star with a medium-sized fleet. I and the 28 lunar mansion guards almost died in the galaxy." True God Tianqing not only destroyed Marshal Nan's fleet, but he also severely injured him. Now he even wants to go to Purple Cloud Planet to seek revenge. Such courage and boldness really make me ashamed. I don't have the face to see anyone. The Heavenly Wolf God had misunderstood this matter and gave all the credit to Ji Tianqing. However, Ji Tianqing did not intend to explain. The process was very complicated and could not be explained in a few words. He comforted the Heavenly Wolf God. "Heavenly Wolf God, leave the matter of killing Marshal Zhenan to me. What you need to do is to heal your injuries as soon as possible and protect Sirius Planet. Also, I will leave 5 elements world with my disciples and divine beasts to seek revenge on Purple Cloud Planet. Now that 5 elements world's defenses are weak, if the heaven-punishing fleet invades again, it will be difficult to resist." Before he could finish, the Heavenly Wolf God understood what he meant and hurriedly nodded. "True God Tianqing, please don't worry. Our lives were saved by you. Once the 5 elements world is invaded by the heaven-punishing race, you only need to send a message and we will go to help. After all, we are all victims of the heaven-punishing race's invasion. It is reasonable for us to work together and help each other. Ji Tianxing nodded slightly and said, "It's good that you understand. If there is nothing else, I will take my leave. You should go and heal your injuries as soon as possible." Seeing that he was about to leave, the heavenly wolf god hurriedly stood up and reached out to stop him. "True God Tianxing, you can't leave now. I have already ordered the guards to prepare carefully. Tomorrow we will hold the ancestral worship hall on the heavenly wolf platform. I would like to use the most sacred ceremony to express my gratitude to you. Furthermore, I will report this great news to the wolf god ancestor." Ji Tianxing frowned and asked, "Is there a need to be so grand? How long will it take?" The Sirius god hurriedly explained, "This matter concerns the survival of the Sirius star, so of course we have to hold the grandest ceremony. Don't worry, the ceremony will be completed in a day. It won't delay your revenge. Moreover, after the wolf god ancestor hears the good news, he will definitely send down the light of God as a gift to thank you for your help." Light of God. Ji Tianxing raised his eyebrows and thought to himself, "Isn't the ancestor of the Sirius star a little too weak? He's actually just a heavenly god." Bai Long, on the other hand, could tell that something was amiss. "Master, although you don't think much of the Sirius ancestor's gift, we need it right now. Don't forget that the 5 elements world is sealed, and the laws of heaven and earth are unable to descend, causing you to be unable to break through to the true God realm. But this is the Sirius star, a place shrouded by the heavenly Tao. Even if the laws of heaven and earth don't descend, you can still break through to the true God realm if you can refine the light of God." Ji Tianxing naturally understood this point. He nodded slightly and said, "What you said makes sense. Then Master will stay for one more day and see the situation first." After being in seclusion in the 9 Heavens 10 Absolutes pagoda for so long, he had not been able to break through to the true God realm. He was very regretful and anxious. Now that the opportunity was in front of him, it would be great if he could take the opportunity to break through to the true God realm. At least after he reached the true God realm, he would be invincible in the purple firmament star zone. After sneaking into the purple firmament star, the chances of killing Marshal Jingnan with his own hands would also be greater. After making up his mind, Ji Tianxing and Bai Long bid farewell and left the temple. Under the guidance of the guards, the two entered the side hall to rest for a while. At the same time, 5 elements world inside the 9 Heavens 10 Absolutes pagoda. Jiku ended his seclusion cultivation and slowly stopped, opening his eyes. "I still can't sense the laws of heaven and earth. Breaking through to the true God realm is still far away. Maybe I should cultivate the 4 divine flames to the extreme and have a chance to break through to the true God realm? Or maybe I should leave the divine pagoda like Big Brother Tianxing and cultivate in the ruins of God for a few months." She muttered to herself, getting up and flying toward the distorted space-time in front of her. "I'll go ask Big Brother Tianxing. Maybe he can help me find the reason." Jiku flew through the distorted space-time at lightning speed and arrived at the place where Ji Tianxing was cultivating in seclusion. However, the place was empty. There was no trace of Ji Tianxing at all. There was only a jade slip floating in the air, shining brightly. Jiku frowned in confusion and reached out to pick up the jade slip. His divine sense entered it, and Ji Tianxing's voice immediately sounded in his mind. "Yao Yao Cuckoo, when you see this letter, I will have already left the 5 elements world." The sudden news stunned Jiku on the spot, and his expression changed on the spot. She suppressed her anxiety and worry. After listening to the news in the jade slip, she took the jade slip and flew toward the place where Yunyao was cultivating in seclusion. Swoosh. Not long after, she arrived at the place where Yunyao was cultivating in seclusion. Yunyao was sitting on the white jade bed. Her hands were forming a seal and she placed them on her knees. Her eyes were closed as she cultivated. Qinshan and Yaya imitated her and sat beside her, meditating and cultivating. The 2 children had already grown to 3 feet tall. They looked very much like Yunyao and Ji Tianxing. Their skin was sparkling and translucent, and their temperament was noble and elegant. Jiku did not disturb the 2 children. He used telepathy to wake Yunyao up. "Eldest senior sister, wake up. I have something to tell you." Yunyao gradually woke up. She ended her cultivation and opened her eyes. Seeing Jiku's anxious face, she asked worriedly, "Cuckoo, what happened? Don't panic. Tell me slowly." Jiku passed the jade slip to her and said telepathically, "Eldest senior sister, this is the letter that Big Brother Tianxing left behind. He has already left the Five Elements world. What? Yun Yao was shocked. Her eyes were filled with worry. Why did Tianqing leave without saying goodbye? Why did he leave the Five Elements world alone? Jiku explained. Big brother Tianqing said that as long as the Heaven Punishers are not destroyed, the Five Elements world will never be truly peaceful. We can hide for now, but we can't hide from Marshal Zhenan's revenge. Instead of waiting for death, we should take the initiative to attack. That's why he left behind this letter and left without saying goodbye. He left the Five Elements world with Qianyu, Black Dragon and White Dragon. He said that the Golden Mountain King had already built an energy stone battleship for him. It's enough for him to roam unhindered. He wants to go to Purple Cloud Planet to kill Marshal Zhenan and stall the Heaven Punishers' army. Only then will the Heaven Punishers have no time to invade the Five Elements world. After hearing this, Yun Yao became even more worried. She smiled bitterly and said, although he never told me, I already knew that he had this idea. I just didn't expect him to go alone and not let us fight with him. He really put in a lot of effort to protect us and the two children. He would rather take all the risks himself. Sigh. Chapter 2553. Yun Yao could only sigh at Ji Tianqing's decision. She was the person who understood Ji Tianqing the most, so she naturally understood Ji Tianqing's intentions. Because of this, her heart was filled with warmth and gratitude despite her worries. Jiku was still not at ease and anxiously asked, Senior sister, both of us have witnessed Marshal Nan's strength. He's at least at the 5th or 6th level of the True God realm. Furthermore, Violet Cloud Planet is Marshal Nan's base, and there are countless powerhouses from the Heaven Punishers stationed there. Big brother Tianqing only brought the White Dragon, Qianyu and the Black Dragon. If he rashly barges into Violet Cloud Planet, it will definitely be extremely dangerous. Yun Yao nodded. Yes, I know what you're saying and I'm also very worried. However, Tianqing's personality is like this. Once he makes a decision, he won't change it easily. Jiku thought for a moment and then suggested, Senior sister, you have to take care of Qianqing and Yaya, so you should stay here. I'm worried about big brother Tianqing. I want to go find him and enter Violet Cloud Planet with him to help him deal with Marshal Nan. Yun Yao hurriedly shook her head and tried to persuade her. Cuckoo, Tianqing is not only worried about me and the two children, but he's also very worried about you. The reason he doesn't want to bring you along is because he doesn't want you to be in danger. He's protecting you. If you go alone, won't he be even more worried? Moreover, Tianqing has a divine warship made from origin stones that can traverse the universe. You don't have a warship, so how will you smoothly reach Violet Cloud Planet? Jiku was suddenly speechless. He was anxious, but he had no good plan. Yun Yao stood up and patted her shoulder, comforting her. All right, Cuckoo. After experiencing so many storms and dangers, don't you understand Tianqing? Since he's made such a decision, he must have his reasons and considerations. We should support and trust him. He's never been a reckless person, so he must have his ways. What we need to do is protect Xinwu continent and the Five Elements realm. We can't distract him. After Yun Yao's persuasion, Jiku gradually dismissed the idea of going to Zixiao planet. She prayed silently in her heart that Ji Tianqing would be safe and successful. A day passed quickly. Early the next morning, the Heavenly Wolf Celestial Race sent a personal guard to invite Ji Tianqing and the White Dragon over. The two of them finished their meditation and walked out of the side chamber. In the square outside the temple, there were over 1,000 Celestial Wolf clan guards in golden armor, forming a grand ceremonial procession. The Heavenly Wolf God sat upright in his enormous divine chariot, dressed in luxurious robes. Beside him was an empty divine chariot. The guard led Ji Tianqing and the White Dragon onto the sacred chariot. Then the Heavenly Wolf deity ordered the honor guard to set out and rush to the Heavenly Wolf Terrace in the depths of the Sea of Clouds. The guard of honor flew in the Sea of Clouds for 2 hours. Divine light flickered along the way and their aura was majestic and majestic. The Heavenly Wolf Arena was an enormous stone platform that stood towering in the Sea of Clouds, and it was 30,000 meters tall. The stone platform was silvery white in color, and it was made from precious starstones that emitted a dense silver light. Ji Tianqing understood that the Heavenly Wolf God was a branch of the Yao clan that worshipped the stars and used the lunar star as their totem. Over the past tens of thousands of years, the Heavenly Wolf clan had developed and expanded, and they had a deep foundation. Countless gods had appeared in the clan, and they had all ascended to the higher realms. In fact, whenever something major happened, the Heavenly Wolf clan would hold a ceremony to worship their ancestors, and they would be able to contact their ancestors in the higher realms. Of course, this kind of connection was limited to simple information exchanges and the descent of divine light. Other than that, they were restricted by the Heavenly Tao's rules and could not communicate with each other. When the Guard of Honor arrived at the Heavenly Wolf Arena, Ji Tianxing saw that the stone platform, which had a radius of 50 kilometers, had already been set up. Tens of thousands of guards stood around the stone platform, and their postures were respectful and pious. In the center of the stone platform, a mysterious array diagram was carved into the ground, and there were 49 sacrificial items placed there. Hundreds of priests in strange attire were surrounding the array and the sacrificial items. They were dancing a strange dance and chanting ancient incantations. The Guard of Honor stopped in the sea of clouds. The Heavenly Wolf God walked down from the divine carriage and led Ji Tianxing and the White Dragon onto the Heavenly Wolf Arena. The Heavenly Wolf God and Ji Tianxing walked side by side. The White Dragon walked to the side of the priests, but he was stopped by a few constellation guards. The 28 constellation guards were guarding the outer circle of the sacrificial items, and they did not dare to step into the array diagram. Although the White Dragon was depressed, he understood that this was the Heavenly Wolf clan's ceremony, and it was very sacred and solemn. Therefore he stayed outside the array diagram and watched as Ji Tianxing and the Heavenly Wolf God walked into the array diagram. After a while, the two of them stood in the middle of the array diagram. The Heavenly Wolf God put his palms together, closed his eyes and silently chanted a few words. Then he waved his hand and shot out a few rays of silver light into the array diagram. Swoosh! In an instant, the huge array diagram, which had a radius of 10 kilometers, lit up with billions of rays of silver light. The dense silver light danced and weaved in the sky, forming thousands of mysterious diagrams that shot into the sky. The hundreds of priests around the array diagram danced even more vigorously and devoutly chanted incantations. Tens of thousands of Heavenly Wolf clan guards, including the 28 constellation guards, knelt down in unison and prostrated themselves on the ground, chanting an ancient and tedious language. The White Dragon stood on the spot in a daze, appearing like a crane among chickens. However, he did not feel awkward. He calmly looked at the sky and observed the mysterious diagrams. He could sense that the thousands of mysterious diagrams had shot into the sky, producing a powerful invisible force that connected to the heavens. At the same time, the Heavenly Wolf God also prostrated himself on the ground, chanting incantations. Ji Tianxing stood to the side, silently watching all of this. He felt the invisible force converging with the heavens. He sighed inwardly. A tiny Heavenly Wolf star can survive for tens of thousands of years without being destroyed. An ancestor ascended to the upper realm and became a true god. This gave the Heavenly Wolf star something to rely on and was unknowingly protected. I wonder how the Heavenly Wolf ancestor will react to the news of the Heaven Punisher's invasion after this ceremony? Unknowingly, 2 hours passed. The thousands of mysterious diagrams in the sky gradually thinned out, leaving behind only endless silver light dancing in the sky. The Heavenly Wolf God, who was prostrating himself on the ground, slowly got up and bowed 3 times toward the heavens. Then he said, "True God Tianxing, the ancestor has heard the voices of his descendants and heard the news. The ancestor is furious and has ordered us to do our best to protect the Heavenly Wolf star and not bring shame to the ancestor's name. At the same time, the ancestor is very grateful for your help and has decided to send down divine light to reward you." Ji Tianxing nodded and waited calmly. When the Heavenly Wolf God saw that he was unmoved, he felt slightly awkward. He reminded him softly, "True God Tianxing, the ancestor is about to send down divine light to reward you. You have to bow to the ancestor like I did." Ji Tianxing raised his eyebrows and asked, "Like you did just now, prostrating yourself on the ground and bowing 3 times?" The Heavenly Wolf God did not feel that there was anything wrong with it. He nodded and said, "Yes." Ji Tianxing's lips curled into a meaningful smile. He asked, "Are you sure?" Chapter 2554. Ji Tianxing's words stunned the Heavenly Wolf deity. His expression became a little strange as he thought to himself, "What does True God Tianxing mean by this? Is he unwilling?" That's right, with his true god-level strength he can dominate the purple firmament star zone without fear of anyone. However, the progenitor is an upper realm deity, an almighty who looks down on all 3,000 worlds. For true God Tianqing to catch the progenitor's eye and be rewarded by him, that's a blessing that billions of powerhouses would be envious of. Thinking of this, the heavenly wolf deity transmitted his voice to Ji Tianqing. True God Tianqing, I understand your concerns. Our races and beliefs are different, so it might be difficult for you to kneel to my progenitor. However, my progenitor is an upper realm deity, a true almighty. For you to receive the progenitor's favor and be rewarded by the divine light is an incomparably glorious and enviable matter. Even I was fortunate enough to receive the divine light's baptism once when I succeeded the heavenly wolf deity. The heavenly wolf deity was very anxious, not wanting Ji Tianqing to miss out on such a great opportunity. However, he could not be too hasty, so he had to pay attention to the way he spoke to avoid offending Ji Tianqing. After all, Ji Tianqing was the great hero who saved the heavenly wolf star. Ji Tianqing could also see that the heavenly wolf deity was in a difficult position, so he smiled and said, "Fine, since you've requested it, I'll kowtow to him 3 times. After saying that, he put his palms together and bowed toward the sky. Although he did not kneel down, He only bowed. However, the billions of starlight in the sky suddenly became scattered and fluttered like snowflakes. The huge formation map also trembled, and the star patterns on the ground became bright and dim as the starlight burst out. The sudden change stunned the heavenly wolf deity, the 28 constellation guards and the thousands of guards. They all looked stunned. At this moment, Ji Tianqing bowed again and bowed a second time. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. The billions of starlight in the sky suddenly shattered, turning into silver light spots and dissipating. Even the heavenly wolf arena beneath everyone's feet started to shake. Tens of thousands of guards were swayed left and right, and the originally grand and orderly formation suddenly became extremely messy. The heavenly wolf god and the 28 lunar mansions came back to their senses. Their expressions changed drastically as they looked up at the sky in confusion. What happened? The illumination light has shattered. Even the grand formation has become chaotic and is about to collapse. Everyone look. There's a crack in the formation. Heavens, what the hell is going on? This is the most sacred sacrificial ceremony of our race. There has never been an accident before. Everyone was inexplicably surprised, but at a loss of what to do, they whispered to each other. The heavenly wolf god finally realized something and he looked at Ji Tianqing in shock. True God Tianqing. He wanted to question Ji Tianqing, but he didn't know what to say. At the same time, Ji Tianqing bowed again, bowing for the 3rd time. Crack. The violently shaking heavenly wolf arena finally couldn't withstand the terrifying force from the heavens, and dozens of cracks appeared on it. The formation diagram was shattered, and many of the offerings were reduced to ashes. Hundreds of priests fell to the ground, their faces ashen as they knelt on the ground and kowtowed incessantly. The 28 lunar mansions and tens of thousands of guards also knelt on the ground, kowtowing to the heavens. Everyone thought that the heavenly wolf ancestor had been angered and had decided to punish them. This was because everyone was uneasy and could only kowtow incessantly, hoping to appease the ancestor's anger. Only the white dragon stood there calmly with a playful smile on his face. He muttered in his heart, how can a mere monarch god receive such a grand bow from master? I'm afraid that the divine monarch would be so scared that he's unable to sit still, right? After bowing, Ji Tianqing lowered his hands and turned to look at the heavenly wolf god. The heavenly wolf god suppressed his shock and hurriedly asked, True God Tianqing, what did you do? Why did you destroy my tribe's sacrificial ceremony? He couldn't understand why Ji Tianqing would do such a thing. Ji Tianqing had no enmity with the heavenly wolf tribe, only a favor. Ji Tianqing pointed to the heavens and said with a faint smile, I didn't want to destroy your ceremony. You'll have to ask your ancestor about this. The heavenly wolf god was at a loss for words, not knowing how to respond. He had to admit that Ji Tianqing hadn't done anything other than kowtow 3 times. Could it be that true God Tianqing's arrogance and lack of sincerity angered the ancestor? This thought flashed through the heavenly wolf god's mind. Should he vent his anger on Ji Tianqing? Or even attack Ji Tianqing to appease the ancestor's anger? That couldn't be right. Who would treat their savior like that? The heavenly wolf tribe didn't have such an ungrateful mindset. Just as the heavenly wolf god was hesitating, the heavens lit up with resplendent starlight. Swoosh. Endless starry divine light, containing a divine and domineering power, poured down like a flood. When the divine light reached the sky above the heavenly wolf arena, it gathered into a huge vortex and surrounded Ji Tianxing. Endless divine light poured into his body like flowing water, cleansing his divine body and divine soul, rapidly increasing his constitution and soul power. Ji Tianxing stood on the stage, spreading his arms and looking up at the heavens, calmly accepting the divine light's baptism. The heavenly wolf god, the 28 lunar mansion guards and the tens of thousands of guards were all dumbfounded. Everyone was dumbfounded, their mouths agape in shock. Heavens! The divine light has descended. Didn't true God Tianxing anger the ancestor? Why would the ancestor send down the light of God? Everyone look, the light of God is so magnificent. It's 100 times brighter than before. If real God Tianheng angered the primogenitor, why would the primogenitor show him such favor and send down such terrifying divine light? Who can tell me what's going on? All the heavenly wolf tribe elites felt like their minds had short-circuited, and their brains were not enough. The scene in front of them was too mysterious and they could not understand it at all. The divine light that descended from the heavens was so powerful that it exceeded everyone's imagination. Compared to the divine light that the heavenly wolf god had received previously, this divine light was 100 times stronger. As a result, the entire heavenly wolf arena was enveloped by the silver light. The 28 lunar mansion guards and the hundreds of priests outside the array diagram were all tainted by a trace of the divine light that seeped out. Everyone immediately felt refreshed. Their constitution and divine souls were cleansed and refined, and they received great benefits. Even the tens of thousands of guards around the heavenly wolf arena were tainted by the light of God, their strength greatly increasing. As for the heavenly wolf god who was standing beside Ji Tianxing in the center of the array diagram, he also received the rich light of God. He hurriedly prostrated himself on the ground and happily absorbed the light of God, silently increasing his strength. The white dragon also benefited from this and happily absorbed the divine light to strengthen his foundation of the divine Tao. Such a scene could be said to be a blessing in disguise. Chapter 2555. The heavenly wolf arena under the divine light was sacred and glorious. Ji Tianxing was in the divine light vortex, like a bottomless pit, crazily devouring the light of God. The surging heavenly God power seemed to be cleansing his body and divine soul. His divine body continued to strengthen and grow rapidly, growing toward the true God realm. The same was true for his soul, growing at an incredible speed. The martial God realm was also known as the virtual God realm. Martial artists of this realm had just stepped into the divine path and had yet to condense a true divine body and control the laws of heaven and earth. What was a god? Every word and action was a law. Every move could control everything in the world, triggering the moon and the stars. This was a true god. If an ordinary martial god wanted to break through to the true god realm, he needed to trigger the laws of heaven and earth. Only by tempering the divine body and soul with the power of laws, eliminating the false and retaining the true to the extreme could he break through. The 5 elements world was sealed. Ji Tianxing had worked hard for many years but still could not trigger the laws of heaven and earth. The heavenly wolf star was not bound. If he cultivated here for many years he would definitely be able to trigger the laws to temper his body and break through to the true God realm. Now the heavenly wolf ancestor directly sent down the vast light of God. That was the pure and powerful heavenly God power from the upper realm, containing the laws of heaven and earth. As a result, Ji Tianxing's special divine body and soul were strengthened to the limit of the martial God realm and broke through to the true God realm. At the same time he also absorbed 2 laws of heaven and earth from the light of God. The first was the life force of a god, the star law. The second was the law controlled by the heavenly wolf ancestor, the space law. These 2 laws came from the heavenly wolf ancestor and were above the heavenly God realm. If it were an ordinary martial god, even if the heavenly God's light tempered their divine body and soul and broke through to the true God realm, they would not be able to refine these 2 laws. But Ji Tianxing was different. He had once surpassed the true God, heavenly God and divine Lord realm and reached the divine King realm. Not to mention the heavenly God realm laws, even the divine Lord and divine King realm laws, he knew them like the back of his hand. With his freakish physique, unique soul and rich cultivation experience, refining these 2 heavenly God grade laws was not a difficult task. Time passed quietly. Unknowingly 4 hours had passed. Ji Tianxing's God body, God soul and God power had all been strengthened to the limit. The shackles that had not loosened for many years were finally broken by him. Swish. Immediately he emitted a dazzling 7-colored divine light and soared into the sky like a rainbow. His aura underwent a huge change. His strength finally broke through the martial god realm and stepped into the true god realm. Buzz. Layers of 7-colored ripples erupted from his body and spread in all directions. Immediately, the heavenly wolf god was blasted back 5 kilometers and landed outside the formation. The 28 lunar mansion's guardians and over 100 priests were also pushed to the edge of the heavenly wolf arena. Everyone widened their eyes and stared at Ji Tianxing in disbelief. Their faces were filled with shock. Wow, what is true God Tianxing doing? Did he just break through? The light of God bestowed by the primogenitor is actually so powerful that it allowed true God Tianxing to break through on the spot. Inconceivable. Only the heavenly wolf god saw the clues and frowned in confusion. After observing Ji Tianxing for a long time, he thought of a possibility and was immediately filled with shock. True God Tianxing looks like he just broke through to the true God realm. He was originally a true god, so why did he repeatedly break through? That's not right. He was originally just a martial god. Now that he was baptized by the light of God, he broke through to the true God realm. I understand now. That's right. Previously, true God Tianxing was only at the peak of the void god realm. Thinking of this, the heavenly wolf god was even more shocked. This is too inconceivable. Previously he was only at the peak of the martial god realm, but his battle prowess was comparable to a true god. Now that he has truly broken through to the true god realm, how terrifying is his battle prowess? The heavenly wolf god did not dare to imagine. However, he deeply understood that he had to firmly hold on to this mysterious true god and maintain a close friendship. This was the only way to benefit the heavenly wolf race. 15 minutes later, Ji Tianxing successfully broke through to the true god realm. The 7-colored ripples bursting out of his body were quickly withdrawn. His aura began to converge, becoming even more unfathomable. Still, no one could detect his strength and realm, but he was suffused with the sacred and majestic aura of a ruler descending to the world and looking down on the universe. He was like a scorching light, making people not dare to look directly at him and could only lower their heads. Even though Ji Tianxing had already broken through to the true God realm. But only half of the divine light that descended from the sky was consumed. The huge star vortex was still revolving around him, constantly pouring into his body. Therefore Ji Tianxing did not end his cultivation. He formed a divine seal with both hands, his eyes tightly closed, still devouring the light of God. Invisibly, his physique and divine soul were still strengthening, his divine power further expanded, and his strength also rapidly increased. 2 hours, 4 hours, 6 hours went by. It was not until his head fell under the sea of clouds and night fell that the divine light that covered the sky dissipated. The light of God was devoured by Ji Tianxing. His realm was stabilized and his strength also increased greatly, reaching the peak of the first level of the true God realm. His slender and valiant body contained surging divine power, as if it could shatter the stars. He ended his cultivation and slowly opened his eyes. Swoosh. In his eyes, 2 majestic and domineering lights burst out as if they were solid. Everyone on the heavenly wolf arena was shocked, their hearts solemn, and they could not help but lower their heads. At this moment, Ji Tianxing had truly been reborn, transcending the category of mortals and returning to the ranks of gods. The heavenly wolf god was the first to recover. He hurriedly bowed and said excitedly, "Congratulations, true God Tianxing." Only then did the 28 lunar mansions, hundreds of priests and tens of thousands of guards come back to their senses. Everyone bowed and congratulated him in unison. The heavenly wolf god was very smart. He saw that Ji Tianxing had just broken through to the true God realm, but he did not point it out. After everyone cheered, Ji Tianxing looked at the heavenly wolf god meaningfully. "Heavenly wolf god, speaking of which, I have to thank you for my gains." The heavenly wolf god was flattered and hurriedly waved his hand. No, true God Tianxing, you flatter me. You are the savior of the heavenly wolf tribe and this is a gift you deserve. Even if you want to thank someone, you should thank my ancestor." Hearing this, Ji Tianxing's eyes flashed with a smile and he looked up at the sky. Fortunately, the light of God formed by billions of starlight had dissipated long ago. The heavenly wolf ancestor in the upper realm did not know what happened on the heavenly wolf arena. Otherwise, Ji Tianxing also wanted to see the heavenly wolf ancestor's reaction. It would be very interesting, right? After a long while everyone calmed down. The ancestral worship ceremony ended in this way, leaving an unforgettable impression on all the heavenly wolf powerhouses. Tianxing did not stay any longer and left with the white dragon. Download address. Chapter 2556. The 28 lunar mansion guards and tens of thousands of guards stayed behind to clean up the mess. The heavenly wolf god personally welcomed Tianxing and respectfully sent him off. Before leaving, the heavenly wolf god sighed from the bottom of his heart, thanking Tianxing for his righteous help. Tianxing did not say much. After exchanging a few words, he stepped onto the Tianxing battleship and sped away. The heavenly wolf god's attitude made him very clear. The heavenly wolf god really wanted to befriend him and pull him into a life and death alliance. He did not need to say much. With just a few words, the heavenly wolf god would help him wholeheartedly. Of course, Tianxing did not need the heavenly wolf god's help in many areas. There was only one thing, and that was the safety of the five elements world. Tianxing believed that the heavenly wolf god knew what to do without him needing to explain. In this way he had achieved the goal of this trip. Moreover, he had an unexpected gain. After obtaining the heavenly wolf ancestor's light of God, not only did he break through to the true God realm, but he also refined 2 laws. This was simply a huge gain. It was enough to make any martial god go crazy. Swoosh. White Dragon steered the Tianxing battleship and flew through the sky at lightning speed. 2 hours later, the Tianxing battleship left the heavenly wolf star and entered the vast void. The battleship continued to fly into the depths of the void, heading straight for the purple firmament planet. Inside the battleship, Tianxing, Qianyu, Black Dragon, and Lan Kun were all recuperating in seclusion. Especially Tianxing, he wanted to take advantage of the next half a year to properly refine the 2 heavenly god-level laws. They were both true gods, but those who had grasped laws and those who had not could not be mentioned in the same breath. Just like the Southern Expedition Marshal, he had actually not completely grasped the power laws. Otherwise, he would not have lost so miserably. Unknowingly, 2 months passed. On this day, the Tianxing battleship sped through the starry sky like a black phantom. Suddenly, a large black shadow appeared in front of the battleship, surging over like a vortex. White Dragon, who was piloting the warship, suddenly woke up and looked ahead with bright eyes. After seeing the black shadow clearly, he immediately frowned and murmured with a grave expression, "It's actually a void storm? Damn it! This young master's luck is as good as the heavens. To think that I would encounter such bad luck." The White Dragon had roamed the Star River for a long time and had ample experience. He knew very well that dangers lurked everywhere in the starry sky, and void storms were one of the most common dangers. One after another, vortex-like void storm after another, containing the power to destroy heaven and earth, was extremely terrifying. Small void storms were only a few thousand miles in radius. Those who were strong enough, such as heavenly gods, could easily deal with them. If they were to encounter a large void storm that spanned hundreds of thousands of miles, only Divine Lord experts would be able to deal with it. Even an ordinary heavenly deity would lose their life if they were not careful. Fortunately, the White Dragon was very experienced. He soon realized that the dozen or so void storms in front of him were extremely powerful. There were only a few small storms, each with a radius of only a few thousand miles. The other 10 void storms all reached a radius of more than 30,000 miles. Faced with such a dangerous situation, it was too late for him to steer the warship to avoid it. Therefore, he decisively controlled the array formation, allowing the warship to explode with extreme speed, crashing into one of the smaller void storms. Bam! Amidst a deafening loud noise, the 3,000 feet long Tianxing warship plunged into the pitch-black vortex. Instantly, the Tianxing warship was crushed and destroyed by the void storm, shaking violently. The terrifying crushing force ruthlessly crushed the surface of the warship, producing a series of sharp sounds that were especially ear-piercing. However, the void storm continued to collapse, unable to break through the defense of the Tianxing warship in the end. After a few breaths of time, when the Tianxing warship passed through the void storm, not a dent was left on the surface. The hair-raising crisis was resolved by the White Dragon just like that. The dozen or so void storms, with the power to destroy everything, flew into the distance. The Tianxing warship continued to fly into the depths of the void. The White Dragon revealed a look of relief and smiled proudly. Humph! Such a small storm, it's simply a piece of cake to this young master. Of course, the White Dragon's words were frivolous and arrogant. In reality, he became even more cautious and careful, pulling himself together at all times, observing the situation ahead. Unknowingly, 2 months' time passed. In these dull and boring 2 months, the White Dragon encountered several dangers one after another. Not only did he encounter a void storm again, he also encountered a mysterious black hole. A black hole was the most terrifying danger in the starry sky. It was an incomparably huge vortex that swallowed all energy, drifting endlessly in the void. It had no fixed residence and would never stop moving. Whether it was the debris in the starry sky, meteorites, or star remains, once swallowed by the black hole, everything would disappear without a trace. Apart from Divine King realm powerhouses, no one could explore the situation inside the black hole. Even more so, no one knew what secrets the most mysterious black hole in the starry sky was hiding. Fortunately, the White Dragon had been concentrating and discovered the black hole's approach in advance. When the terrifying devouring power attacked, he steered the Tianqing warship ahead of time, avoiding the black hole's path of movement. This way he also avoided the endgame of the warship being destroyed and people dying. Unknowingly, another month had passed. The White Dragon estimated that the Tianqing warship was still a month's journey away from the Purple Cloud Star. Logically speaking, this was already the central zone of the Purple Cloud Star Zone, so it should be very safe. However, on this day the Tianqing warship encountered a new danger. 3 warships came from the starry sky, blocking the Tianqing warship's path. The White Dragon observed carefully, and he had already seen the flags of the 3 warships, with swords and skulls hanging on them. His eyes suddenly brightened and he sneered, "Interstellar pirates? But I haven't encountered such a thing for more than 1,000 years. Since I'm bored, I'll use you guys to relieve my boredom." Interstellar pirates were also one of the common dangers in the starry sky. The interstellar pirates who roamed the starry sky and had no fixed residence gathered the powerhouses and geniuses of various planets and races. They had strong combat power, powerful divine weapons, and made a living by robbing. If it were in a peaceful and stable star zone, the interstellar pirates would be the main target of the various worlds. They usually had nowhere to hide and could only roam. However, the Purple Cloud Star Zone was in a state of change and wars were everywhere. The Heaven Punishers had taken over the Purple Cloud Star, but they were busy waging war to unify the various worlds. The entire star zone was in a state of war and chaos, which gave the interstellar pirates an opportunity. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. In the blink of an eye, the 3 interstellar pirate warships surrounded the Tianqing warship. A dark red pillar of light lit up on the interstellar pirate warship, signaling the surrender. The White Dragon ignored it and fearlessly steered the Tianqing warship toward one of the interstellar pirate warships. Chapter 2557. Kaboom! The Tianqing battleship collided with the pirate battleship in a deafening explosion. Suddenly, the 2,000 feet long pirate battleship was smashed into pieces and debris splattered everywhere. At least a few thousand martial Sacred Realm experts in strange outfits fell from the sky, roaring in anger and fear. There were also a dozen martial gods in armor and holding divine weapons. They cursed furiously and attacked the Tianqing battleship. Seeing this, Bai Long's smile became brighter and the disdain in his eyes became stronger. "How dare you rob me with a few empty god-level battleships? The god of longevity has eaten arsenic and is tired of living." As he spoke, he steered the Tianqing battleship and turned around abruptly and charged toward the pirates. Bang 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 bang. In the next moment, more than 1,000 pirates who could not dodge in time were hit by the Tianqing battleship and were smashed into pieces on the spot. Even the dozen or so martial god realm pirate leaders were knocked flying and coughed up blood continuously. The pirate leader was enraged by this scene. The remaining 2 pirate battleships immediately locked onto the Tianqing battleship and unleashed their most ferocious firepower, releasing hundreds of colorful light pillars. Boom 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 boom. The Tianqing battleship dodged most of the attacks but was still hit by hundreds of light pillars. There was a series of loud bangs. Suddenly, the Tianqing battleship lit up with a sacred golden light and shook more than a dozen times. The hundreds of colorful light pillars collapsed on the spot and shattered into thousands of light spots. The pirate leader was dumbfounded and so were the other pirate leaders. They did not know what to do. While everyone was in a daze, Bai Long steered the Tianqing battleship and charged toward the other pirate battleship. The pirate battleship was frightened. It immediately unleashed all its strength and turned around, swinging its tail and narrowly dodging the attack. The Tianqing battleship flew a few hundred miles before it turned around and charged toward the other pirate battleship. The two pirate battleships were frightened and dodged in a hurry. They did not dare to collide with the Tianqing battleship. Seeing this, the White Dragon laughed even more arrogantly. He was not in a hurry to release the divine cannon. Instead, he controlled the Tianqing battleship to rampage through the void, forcing the two pirate battleships to flee in panic. The interstellar pirates were forced into a fluster and were filled with grief and anger. The White Dragon, on the other hand, was having a lot of fun. Soon 15 minutes passed. More than half of the space pirates and more than a dozen martial gods were killed by Tianqing's battleship. The few remaining martial god realm pirate leaders fled back to the two warships in a panic. The two pirate warships also lost their temper. They were chased around until they were dizzy and disoriented, unable to differentiate between east and west. The leader of the island knew that he had run into a tough nut, so he could only swallow his anger and admit defeat. However, the White Dragon was not willing to let things end here. It chased after the two warships relentlessly, vowing to crush them into smithereens. At this moment, an indifferent and dignified voice sounded in White Dragon's mind. "Little White, after playing around for so long, you still haven't ended the battle. You've really disappointed me." There was no doubt that the person who spoke was Ji Tianqing. The White Dragon, who was in high spirits, suddenly stiffened as if a bucket of cold water had been poured over his head. He smiled awkwardly and explained, "Master, please don't be angry. I was too playful and wanted to play with them for a while longer. Don't worry, Master, I'll take care of them immediately." Before the White Dragon could finish, Ji Tianqing's voice sounded again. "No need. I'll do it myself. It's a good opportunity to test the power of the spatial laws." Hearing this, the White Dragon's divine sense sensed that Ji Tianqing had flown out of the battleship and entered the void. The next moment he saw Ji Tianqing rushing toward a pirate battleship with the sword of burial of heaven. Swoosh! A dazzling white light flashed. Ji Tianqing instantly crossed 1,000 miles and appeared above the pirate battleship. The next moment, Ji Tianqing held the sword of burial of heaven with both hands and slashed down fiercely. Kaboom! The dazzling white sword slashed the pirate battleship with a deafening sound. The next moment, the 2,000-meter-long battleship was cut in half at the waist, splashing debris everywhere. More than 2,000 oddly dressed pirates were thrown out of the wreckage of the battleship and scattered in the void. There were also a dozen martial god experts in armor with different appearances floating in the void, trying their best to call out to the surrounding pirates. They were all pirate leaders. Then Ji Tianqing's body was wrapped in dazzling white light. He flashed a few times and rushed into the crowd. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The white light flashed continuously. He kept flashing in the crowd. Every time he appeared, he could bring about a sword light storm that could destroy heaven and earth. The dazzling white sword light swallowed the figures of countless pirates. Even the dozen pirate leaders were not spared. After a short 10 breaths, the dazzling white sword light gradually dissipated. More than 2,000 pirates and more than a dozen pirate leaders in the martial god realm were all smashed into powder and scattered in the void. Seeing this scene, White Dragon's eyes widened, revealing a look of horror. "Oh my god! Since when did Master become so strong?" When he broke through to the true god realm, he was not so fierce and powerful. Not only was Bai Long stunned, but the pirate leader on the other battleship was also filled with fear. After coming to his senses, the pirate leader quickly ordered the battleship to retreat quickly and escape from this place. However, Ji Tianqing quickly chased after them with his sword. The battleship was also split in half and crashed in the void. More than 2,000 pirates and more than a dozen experts scattered in the void and fled for their lives. Ji Tianqing began to chase. Dazzling white light bloomed all over his body. He turned into a deadly whirlwind and swept into the crowd. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Wherever the white whirlwind went, countless pirates were smashed into pieces and turned into ashes. Even those martial god-level pirate leaders were unable to withstand it and were instantly killed. Ji Tianqing chased them for a few thousand miles and killed all the pirates and their leaders. Only the last pirate leader was left. He relied on his LV6 martial god realm strength to escape 20,000 miles away. When Ji Tianqing stopped him, he was scared out of his wits. He immediately stopped running and knelt on the ground with a panicked expression. He kept kowtowing and begging for mercy. However, the pirate leader was a member of a foreign tribe. He looked like a blue-black octopus the size of a mountain. He was extremely ugly and his body was covered with tentacles and pustules. Moreover, the language he spoke was strange. Ji Tianxing could not understand half of it. Ji Tianxing did not bother to listen to his nonsense and killed him with a stroke of his sword. Anyway, he did not have the leisure to take captives and would not let the pirate leader go. This was because he knew that the Starry Sky pirates roamed the star area and burned, killed and plundered everywhere. Wherever they went, they were as cruel as the demon tribe. The only way to deal with such inhumane Starry Sky pirates was to kill them. Chapter 2558. After dealing with the space pirates, Ji Tianxing returned to the battleship. Bai Long's face was full of admiration as he could not help but exclaim, "Master, it looks like you've already refined the space law and mastered it very well. That's a medium-level law and you've mastered it with your true immortal realm strength. It's really incredible and shocking the three realms." Ji Tianxing ignored him and said calmly, "Let's continue forward." Bai Long did not feel embarrassed. He answered happily and continued to drive the battleship forward. Unknowingly, another month had passed. Tianxing's battleship crossed half a galaxy and finally arrived at Purple Cloud Planet. Bai Long saw a huge planet in the void ahead of him that was still hundreds of thousands of miles away. It was shining with a dazzling purple light. He could see that the planet shrouded in purple light was several times larger than the Five Elements world. Compared to the purple planet, the other planets in the void were so small that they were not worth mentioning. After seeing the purple planet's appearance, Bai Long's eyes flashed with a cold light, and his lips curled into a sneer. He sent a voice transmission to Ji Tianxing and reported, "Master, we're about to arrive at Purple Cloud Planet." Ji Tianxing, who was cultivating in seclusion and comprehending the law power, quickly woke up. He ended his cultivation, walked out of the secret room and went to the cockpit. Bai Long stood in the middle of the cockpit, standing on a dark golden disc. The disc was engraved with array patterns, which were used to control Tianxing's battleship. Ji Tianxing stood in front, staring at the white light screen in the sky, observing the scene in the void. The scene in all directions was reflected on the light screen, clear and direct. Ji Tianxing stared at the light screen for a moment and said with a frown, "Purple Cloud Planet looks peaceful, but it's already been occupied by the Heaven Punishers. If I'm not wrong, Purple Cloud Planet must be heavily guarded, and no one can enter or leave as they wish." The white dragon looked indifferent and said proudly, "So what? Let's find a secluded place and try to penetrate the purple light shield. Then we can enter the purple cloud star." Ji Tianxing nodded slightly and continued, "Entering the purple cloud star is not a difficult task. The main problem is, what should we do after entering the purple cloud star? Bai Long, pay close attention to the situation on Xiao star. I need to think about the next plan." After that, Ji Tianxing left the cockpit. Bai Long continued to steer the warship towards Xiao planet. 3 days later, the battleship flew close to the purple cloud star, very close to the purple light shield. At this time, the Tianxing battleship stopped and floated in the void. White Dragon carefully observed the surrounding situation, his eyes sharp. Through the screen in the cockpit, he could clearly see the situation on Xiao planet. A gigantic purple light barrier enveloped the peaceful star. Every once in a while, the Heaven Slayer race's battleships would fly around the purple light barrier. Of course, White Dragon could tell that they were the Heaven Slayer race's patrol team responsible for protecting the purple cloud star. However, other than the Heaven Slayer race's battleships, there were many other battleships of different styles flying in from all directions and entering the purple cloud star. White Dragon could tell that these strange battleships came from various large worlds and races. He could not help but feel puzzled and murmured to himself, "Strange. The purple cloud star has already been taken over by the Heaven Slayer race. Shouldn't it be under martial law? Why can so many alien battleships enter the purple cloud star?" Filled with doubts, he steered the battleship to the left. In the void, there was a dark gold battleship heading towards the purple cloud star. Whoosh! The Tianxing battleship was huge and extremely fast. He quickly stopped that battleship. The dark gold battleship immediately stopped and looked warily at the Tianxing battleship. Bai Long left the Tianxing battleship and flew in front of the dark gold battleship. He gestured with his hands and feet. Then the hatch of the dark gold battleship opened, and several alien race elites in golden armor flew out. These alien race elites looked like elephants. Their bodies were as large as mountains and they had 4 thick hooves and huge trunks. Bai Long recognized them as the golden elephant race. He racked his brains to recall and spoke to them in the language of the golden elephant race. After a long stuttering conversation, he finally understood the situation and the reason. Thus he thanked the golden elephant race elites and returned to the Tianqing battleship. The dark gold battleship did not linger and headed straight for the purple cloud star. Bai Long hurriedly found Ji Tianqing and reported everything in detail. "Master, I've heard the news. The golden elephant race battleship just now came from the faraway golden elephant star. Half a year ago that star was taken over by the Heaven Slayer race, and the golden elephant race has become their slaves." Hearing this, Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and asked with interest, "If they are slaves of the Heaven Slayer race, then what are the golden elephant race doing on the purple cloud star? Could it be that the golden elephant race has brought a huge amount of resources and wealth to pay tribute to the Heaven Slayer race?" Bai Long hurriedly nodded and explained with a smile, "Master, you are so wise. That's right. The cowards of the golden elephant race are here to pay tribute to the Heaven Slayer race. Moreover, it's not just the golden elephant race. More than 100 races from other worlds have come to pay tribute to the Heaven Slayer race and swear allegiance to them. I heard from the golden elephant race's god lord that the Heaven Slayer race is holding a myriad kingdom divine assembly. All races that have submitted to the Heaven Slayer race or want to surrender have to pay tribute and participate in the assembly." Hearing this, Ji Tianqing's lips curled into a cold smile. He said disdainfully, "Huh. There are only about 300 mortal worlds in the entire purple cloud star zone. Where did the myriad kingdom divine assembly come from? The Heaven Slayer race is bluffing and bluffing. They want to intimidate the major worlds and capture them without shedding a drop of blood." Bai Long nodded and sneered. Nothing can be hidden from Master's sharp eyes. That's right, that's the Heaven Slayer race's intention. After all, the South Conquering Marshal was severely injured by you and has been in seclusion to recuperate. He can't lead the army. The Heaven Slayer race's forces are too scattered, so it's difficult for them to invade the major worlds one by one. That's why the Heaven Slayer race created this myriad kingdom divine assembly to win over the hearts of the people. I predict that the Heaven Slayer race will use the major races to deal with the worlds that refuse to submit." Ji Tianqing nodded slightly and said, "Yes, there are only so many schemes that the Heaven Slayer race can use. It's easy to understand. Since they want to hold the myriad kingdom divine assembly, we can take advantage of it." Bai Long's eyes lit up. He asked, "Master, what do you mean?" Ji Tianqing said calmly, "Pretend to submit to the Heaven Slayer race and enter Purple Cloud Star using the excuse of participating in the Myriad Kingdom Divine Assembly." "Brilliant." Bai Long smiled proudly and gave him a thumbs up. Then he asked, "What happens after we enter Purple Cloud Star?" Ji Tianqing said snappily, "I don't know the situation in Purple Cloud Star. How can I have a specific plan? We'll talk about it after we enter Purple Cloud Star. We'll act according to the situation." End of chapter. This book came from Chapter 2559. After making up his mind, Ji Tianqing started to look for his target. The Tianqing battleship was special. It was difficult for him to disguise himself as a tribe and enter Purple Cloud Star alone. Moreover, a battleship made of dawn stones would easily arouse suspicion. Therefore, Ji Tianqing decided to find a foreign tribe's battleship and sneak in. He left the battleship and entered the void alone to keep the Tianqing battleship. After waiting patiently for 3 days in the dark and cold void, he finally found his target. Zhou. A silvery white battleship that was 2,000 feet long sped through the void toward Purple Cloud Star. The silvery white battleship had a beautiful design like a crescent moon. Even the body of the battleship was engraved with a crescent moon pattern. "You are the one," Ji Tianqing murmured. He quickly entered the state of invisibility and approached the battleship. Soon he encountered the crescent moon battleship. While the battleship was not paying attention, he quietly flew to the battleship and entered the white light. The silver light that the battleship emitted was the powerful star divine power. Coincidentally, Ji Tianqing had just refined the star rules and his control of the star divine power had reached the level of meticulous detail. Zhou. He easily passed through the star divine light and stuck to the silver battleship. He took out the sword of burial of heaven and drilled a fist-sized hole in the battleship. He then shrunk his body and entered the battleship. After entering the battleship, he maintained his state of invisibility and moved forward cautiously. As he searched, he released a powerful spiritual consciousness and shrouded the entire battleship. After a short while, he figured out the situation in the battleship. The Middle Empty God Realm battleship carried hundreds of Martial Sage Realm guards and 3 Martial God Realm elites. The leader was a silvery white young lady in a long silver dress. The young lady's strength had reached level 7 Martial God Realm. However, she looked like she was about 17 years old and she still looked young. She looked very similar to a human. However, she had a pair of wings on her back and a silver crescent moon mark on her forehead. The 2 martial gods following the girl with the crescent moon were old women in loose cloaks and godly robes. Their strength had reached the 5th layer Martial God Realm too. In addition, the battleship's cargo hold was filled with a large amount of cultivation resources and precious star moon divine stones. Ji Tianxing frowned and thought for a while before he recalled the information. If I'm not wrong, these should be the Moon Spirit clan. They used the silver moon as their natal power. 1,000 years ago, when the sword god roamed the starry sky, he came into contact with the 100 races. The Moon Spirit tribe was one of them. Therefore, not only could Ji Tianxing recognize the Moon Spirit clan's language, but he could also understand their language. The Moon Spirit's battleship. At this time, Ji Tianxing's divine sense detected that the Crescent Moon Girl and 2 old women were talking in a hidden room. The Crescent Moon Girl's mood was heavy and low, and there was a strong resentment between her brows. She said coldly with her back to the 2 old ladies, "Even now I can't get over it. The despicable and cruel Heaven Punisher tribe invaded the Moon Spirit world and started a great war. They slaughtered billions of our people. Their evil deeds brought about a devastating blow to our tribe. Not even 1,000 years can erase the pain. Why do we still have to bow to the Heaven Punisher tribe and offer up our tribe's treasure? Priestesses, are we really going to surrender to the Heaven Punisher tribe? If our people know about this, they will hate us and see us as a disgrace to the Moon Spirit tribe." The young lady was agitated. Her voice was filled with indignation and unyielding. However, the 2 old ladies in divine robes shook their heads and sighed bitterly. They tried to comfort her. "God Lord Silvermoon, don't you understand? We can't go against the tide. The Heaven Punisher tribe is the most powerful tribe in the entire star region. They are blessed by the gods. Even if we did our best and sacrificed all our experts to stop the Heaven Punisher fleet's invasion, we would still die. However, if we die one after another, the Heaven Punisher will send another fleet to invade. Who can stop them? God Lord, what time is it now? Why can't you understand? Even if you are unwilling, please respect the Council of Elders' decision. We must submit to the Heaven Punisher tribe. Even if we become slaves to the Heaven Punisher tribe, we can at least protect 20 billion Moon Spirit people. As long as we are still alive, there is still hope for us to rise again. If we oppose the Heaven Punisher tribe, they will have the favor of the gods. Our Moon Spirit race will only perish." God Lord Silvermoon furrowed his brow and fell silent upon hearing the advice of the 2 priests. Her expression was heavy and sorrowful, her eyes brimming with unwillingness. However, she also understood that the 2 priests were not lying. If they clashed with the Heaven Punisher tribe, they would not have a good end. After a long silence, God Lord Silvermoon said in a low voice, "I can obey the Council of Elders' decision and participate in the Myriad Kingdom Divine Assembly and surrender to the Heaven Punisher tribe. However, I will leave this matter to the 2 of you. I will remain on the warship and enter seclusion to cultivate for a while." It was clear that God Lord Silvermoon was unwilling to submit, much less kowtow to the Heaven Punisher tribe and beg for peace. The 2 priests were instantly put in a difficult spot. They bitterly smiled and tried to persuade her. "God Lord, aren't you being a little too obvious? You're already here, so how can you not participate in the Myriad Kingdom Divine Assembly? The Heaven Punisher generals will definitely see through your intentions. If they take their anger out on our race, the Moon Spirit Star will be in trouble." But God Lord Silvermoon was unmoved. She firmly said, "This God Lord disdains to wag my tail and beg for mercy. Otherwise I would rather die. I've made up my mind. Do as you see fit." The 2 god-robed priests suddenly stiffened, and their expressions became somewhat ugly. But there was nothing they could do, nor could they force God Lord Silvermoon. At this moment the Crescent warship arrived near the Violet Barrier and was stopped by 2 Heaven Punisher warships. The 2 priests could only withdraw from the secret chamber and inform the Heaven Punisher of their identities and intentions. Once the 2 old women left, the gloomy secret chamber fell silent once more. God Lord Silvermoon stood in the darkness, staring at the light screen on the wall and then at Purple Heaven Star, her eyes flashing with deep hatred. Just when her thoughts were in turmoil and her emotions were in turmoil, a deep and dignified male voice resounded through the secret chamber. Since you've decided to submit to the Heaven Punisher race, wag your tail and beg for mercy as a slave, why are you going back on your word now? God Lord Silvermoon was jolted out of his stupor by this voice. He quickly turned around and scanned the area with sharp eyes. Who is it? Who's speaking? Come out. But despite God Lord Silvermoon's cold voice echoing through the secret chamber, no one appeared. The cold and indifferent male voice spoke once more. If you don't want to live and be enslaved by the Heaven Punisher race, why have you come here to surrender? Indecisive people are often the ones who cause the deaths of their clansmen. God Lord Silvermoon instantly tensed up. With a whoosh, she pulled out her divine sword and coldly stared into the darkness. The matters of my moon spirit race have nothing to do with this, sir, so you have no right to comment. Just who is this, sir? When did you intrude on my race's worship? End of this chapter. This book came from Chapter 2560. God Lord Silvermoon was on full alert. She didn't dare to believe that someone had snuck onto the warship and overheard her conversation with the 2 priests. Just how strong was this person to possess such skills? Hundreds of thoughts flashed through her mind as she tried to guess at this person's identity. At this moment the dignified man spoke once more. Who I am is not important. What is important is that you follow your heart and not disgrace the integrity of a God Lord, much less the faith of the moon spirit race's people. God Lord Silvermoon's face stiffened as she sternly asked, "What relationship does your excellency have with the moon spirit race? Why are you interfering in the affairs of my race?" The dignified male voice replied indifferently, "Me? Just like you, I am a God Lord of a world in the purple firmament star zone. Just like the moon spirit race, the people under my command were invaded and massacred by the Heaven Punishing race." Hearing this, God Lord Silvermoon frowned and jeered, "So that's how it is. Didn't you also come to participate in the Myriad Kingdom God Conference and surrender to the Heaven Punishing race? Yet you dare to shamelessly boast and urge me to resist? What right do you have?" "Ha ha." The young man coldly laughed. "No, you're wrong. I didn't come to participate in the Myriad Kingdom God Conference, much less to surrender." God Lord Silvermoon frowned and asked, "Then what are you doing here?" The young man hiding in the shadows replied, "To assassinate the Southern Marshal and destroy the Heaven Punishing army. Do you believe me?" "What?" God Lord Silvermoon froze for a moment before regaining his wits. Shaking his head he said, "What shameless boasting. How much do you know about the Heaven Punishing race? Do you know what kind of terrifying existence the elusive Southern Expedition Marshal is?" The young man calmly said, "My understanding of the Heaven Punishing race might not be as deep as yours. But the number of Heaven Punishing experts I've killed with my sword is definitely more than what you've seen. As for the Southern Marshal, he's just a 5th-degree true god." Hiss. God Lord Silvermoon couldn't help but suck in a cold breath of air in shock. Just a 5th-stage realm true god? Nothing? Without waiting for the young man to answer, the 2 priests in divine robes returned. After entering the secret chamber, the 2 old women looked around with puzzled expressions. "Divine Master, who were you talking to just now?" "Divine Lord, what's wrong? What happened?" As they spoke, the 2 old women examined God Lord Silvermoon, their gazes falling on the divine sword in her hand. God Lord Silvermoon hurriedly put away his divine sword and put on a stern expression. "It's nothing. You heard wrong. All right, what's the situation outside?" The 2 old women suppressed their doubts and stopped asking about this matter. They bowed and explained, "Divine Master, the patrol guards of the Heaven Punisher race stopped us. After inspecting the battleship and asking about our intentions, they let us pass. Now that we have entered the Purple Cloud Star, we are on our way to the Heaven Punishing Deity Palace to participate in the 10,000 Kingdoms God Conference." God Lord Silvermoon expressionlessly said, I understand. All of you are dismissed." The 2 old women looked at each other. Then they bowed and took their leave. The secret chamber quickly fell silent once more. God Lord Silvermoon scanned the surroundings with blazing eyes as she softly asked, "Hey, are you still there?" "Here," the young man who was hiding in the dark replied. God Lord Silvermoon instantly relaxed, his wariness vanishing. She hesitated for a moment before asking, "Sir, did you infiltrate my race's battleship because you wanted to infiltrate the Purple Cloud Star to carry out the assassination?" The young man replied. God Lord Silvermoon raised her eyebrows and playfully said, "Sir, I am filled with admiration for your daring. However, the Heaven Punisher race is the strongest race blessed by the gods, and the Southern Marshal is a true god expert. Sir, for you to be so confident, could you also be a true god expert? If you aren't, then how is this any different from sending you to your death?" The hidden young man calmly replied, "There are some things that someone has to do. It has nothing to do with life or death, success or failure." Upon hearing these words, God Lord Silvermoon instantly felt a deep sense of respect, and his clear eyes became even brighter. She turned to the dark corner of the secret chamber and respectfully clasped her hands. "Sir, Silvermoon admires your courage and will to fight. Please accept Silvermoon's bow." The hidden young man indifferently said, "Empty courtesy is useless. If you are also unwilling, if you still have any hot-bloodedness or dignity left, you should not have submitted to the Heaven Punisher race." God Lord Silvermoon instantly frowned and bitterly smiled. "Sir, since you heard my conversation with the two priests, you should also know that I had no choice. As the leader of the Moon Spirit race, I must consider the overall situation." The young man calmly said, "Since that's the case, I won't force you. I will only ask you one thing. I want to infiltrate the Myriad Kingdom Divine Assembly and use this chance to kill the Heaven Punisher. Are you willing to help me?" God Lord Silvermoon hesitated, a look of struggle and embarrassment on her face. "Forget it. Just treat it as if I never came." The young man hiding in the dark sighed in a bleak tone, as if he was a little disappointed. God Lord Silvermoon was alarmed and hastily called out, "Hold on." The hidden young man seemed to stop and asked, "How about it?" God Lord Silvermoon no longer hesitated. Suppressing her complicated thoughts, she firmly said, "I'm willing. Sir will never submit to the Heaven Punisher race and would rather die in battle for revenge." Such resolve and daring makes Silvermoon feel ashamed of her inferiority. Since Silvermoon and Sir are connected by fate, how can Silvermoon just sit by and watch? "Sir, I thank you for your warning and for enlightening Silvermoon so that she will no longer be confused." After saying this, God Lord Silvermoon bowed to the darkness. "Sir, how can I help you?" The hidden young man calmly said. "It's very simple. After you participate in the Myriad Kingdom Divine Assembly and offer your tribute, don't be in a hurry to leave. Help me take a few people to the Zero Continent." "The Zero Continent?" God Lord Silvermoon raised an eyebrow and asked in confusion. "That's one of the 5 continents of Violet Heaven Star, and it's also the most prosperous continent. Many Heaven Punishers are stationed there. Sir's request is that simple?" "Of course," the young man replied. "I agree." God Lord Silvermoon decisively agreed. However, a hint of craftiness flashed through her clear eyes and she playfully said, "But I can't easily believe your words. Only if you stop hiding and come out to speak with me can you prove your sincerity." It was clear that God Lord Silvermoon was extremely curious about this mysterious young man. God Lord Silvermoon had originally believed that this man would not show himself in order to maintain his mystery. But to her surprise, the moment she spoke, a golden light flashed in the corner of the secret chamber. Whoosh! A handsome young man in a white robe appeared in the secret chamber out of thin air. Chapter 2561. The white-robed youth quietly stood in the center of the secret chamber, his hands clasped behind his back. God Lord Silvermoon's eyes widened in shock as he stared at the white-robed youth. You are a human God Lord?" This was God Lord Silvermoon's first time leaving the moon spirit world. She had never seen a human before. But she had been well-read since she was a child, reading countless ancient biographies and seeing descriptions and legends of the human race. The handsome, valiant, and mysterious white-robed young man in front of her was exactly what she imagined a human powerhouse to look like. The white-robed youth did not hide the truth and nodded. God Lord Silvermoon was even more surprised as she curiously asked, "Since you are a human, how do you know the language of the moon spirit race?" The youth shook his head and expressionlessly said, "It's a secret." God Lord Silvermoon pursed her lips, somewhat disappointed as she muttered to herself, "Humph," acting all mysterious. The youth did not reply, only said in a dignified voice, "Your wish has been fulfilled. If there's nothing else." Before he could finish, Godlord Silvermoon hastily waved her hand and asked, "Don't. I have another question. What is your name?" The white-robed young man answered decisively, "Tianhang." "Tianxing?" Godlord Silvermoon muttered this name, a smile on her pretty face. "I remember you. I hope that you won't disappoint me." "Disappoint?" Tianxing raised an eyebrow and calmly said, "I only bring hope to my friends and despair to my enemies." Godlord Silvermoon once more pursed her lips and shot him a skeptical glance. "Overconfidence is arrogance." Tianxing did not reply, nor did he want to explain. Godlord Silvermoon had been snubbed, so she changed the topic. "Tianxing, in another 4 hours, we will reach heaven-punishing divine palace to take part in the myriad countries' divine assembly. What plans do you have? And didn't you want me to help you bring a few people? Where are they?" Tianxing did not respond to the question about the plan. He indifferently said, "The time is not yet right. Once you offer the tribute, I will hand them over to you." After saying this, he turned and vanished into the darkness. "Hey!" Godlord Silvermoon frowned and unhappily stomped his foot. "You scoundrel, how could you be so rude? I haven't even finished speaking." However, Tianxing had already hidden in the darkness and was completely silent. Godlord Silvermoon was bored, so he gloomily left the secret chamber and went to the treasury to check on the tributes. Unknowingly, 4 hours had passed. The Silver Moon battleship faced the golden sun and flew in the white sea of clouds. 10,000 miles ahead, a dazzling golden light appeared in the sea of clouds. Looking from afar, one could vaguely see that there were dozens of majestic palaces within the dazzling light and shadow. Without a doubt, the group of majestic palaces was the heaven-punishing divine palace. Around 15 minutes later, the Silver Moon battleship arrived outside the heaven-punishing divine palace and stopped in the spacious plaza. The square was paved with supreme-grade spiritual jade and had a radius of 100 miles. Around the square, there were tens of thousands of soldiers in black armor standing guard, looking majestic. In the center of the plaza were 3 massive statues. The statue in the center was more than 10,000 feet tall, depicting a dignified middle-aged man with the face of a man and the body of a lion. This man wore dark golden armor and a dazzling crown. This was the supreme leader of the heaven-punishing race, Great Emperor Heaven Punishing. On either side of Great Emperor Heaven Punishing was a statue that was more than 8,000 feet tall. These 2 statues were also dignified experts of the heaven-punishing race who looked down on the world. They seemed to be Great Emperor Heaven Punishing's left and right arms. It was obvious at a glance that these 2 statues were probably the left and right protectors. After passing by Great Emperor Heaven Punishing statues and continuing deeper into the plaza, one could see several majestic palaces. Every palace was magnificent, extremely luxurious and dignified. There was a huge signboard above the gate of the palace in the middle. The words Heaven Punishing Divine Palace were written on it. Outside the gate of the Heaven Punishing Divine Palace, there were 99 steps leading to the plaza. Every step of the stairs was guarded by 2 guards in black armor. More than 100 martial gods of various appearances from various worlds stood respectfully at the bottom of the stairs, waiting quietly. Without permission, they did not dare to step onto the steps, much less enter the heaven-punishing divine palace. The expressions and gazes of all the experts of the foreign tribes were extremely complicated. Some of them were filled with reverence as they waited respectfully. Some of them appeared to be respectful, but deep in their eyes, they were filled with hatred and humiliation. Some of them had complicated emotions and their expressions were unreadable. It was as if they were suffering from great torment. After all the experts in the plaza had been defeated by the heaven-punishing race. This time they had traveled across the starry sky to Purple Cloud Planet to participate in the 10,000 countries holy meet and offer tributes to the heaven-punishing race. They had been invaded by the heaven-punishing race and countless people had been killed. Yet they still had to offer tributes and beg for mercy. How humiliating was this? However, when the experts arrived at the heaven-punishing divine palace, they still had to wait in the plaza. Without permission from the heaven-punishing race, They could not even take a step onto the steps. This was an even greater humiliation. All the experts of the foreign tribes understood that the heaven-punishing race was intentionally humiliating them. But they could only endure the humiliation and continue to wait. Whoosh! The Silver Moon warship flew over from the distance and landed on the plaza. In a flash of light, God Lord Silver Moon put away the warship. She and the two priests appeared on the plaza and began to walk toward the heaven-punishing divine palace. The 200 Moon Spirit Race guards remained on the Silver Moon warship and were being carried by God Lord Silver Moon. Her spatial ring was also filled with priceless tributes. Rustle, rustle, rustle. With light footsteps, God Lord Silver Moon and the two priests quickly arrived at the center of the plaza. God Lord Silver Moon stopped and looked up at the three towering statues, his face calm as he examined them. But a group of heaven-punishing guards immediately flew over. The captain of the guards sternly rebuked, "Hurry and leave. Do you think that the emperor of my race is something that lowly commoners like you can admire?" A thick sense of humiliation welled up in God Lord Silver Moon's heart. Her face chilled and a cold light flashed through her eyes. However, the two priests hurriedly bowed and apologized to the captain of the guards before escorting God Lord Silver Moon away. God Lord Silver Moon could only suppress her anger and humiliation, silently lowering her head and walking toward the heaven-punishing divine palace. She reached the edge of the plaza and the steps leading up to the divine palace. She and the two priests, like the experts of the other races, quietly stood and patiently waited. No one came to ask or inform them when the myriad kingdom god assembly would begin. The blazing sun in the sky slowly set and night gradually descended. Over 100 alien race experts were still standing where they were, not daring to utter a single word of complaint. In the next 2 days, 10 more groups of foreign experts arrived, all of them here to offer tributes. God Lord Silver Moon was getting impatient. He sent a message to the secret room in the Silver Moon battleship. "Tianxing, are you still there?" But no one answered. Chapter 2562. God Lord Silver Moon called out several more times, but she received no response. Little talk following a dream. Only now did she realize that Tianxing had left the Silver Moon battleship some time ago. Strange, when did he leave the battleship? Why didn't I sense him at all? This scoundrel comes and goes without a trace. He's far too mysterious. I wonder if he has the strength of a true god, if he can successfully assassinate the Southern vanquishing marshal? God Lord Silver Moon expressionlessly stood at her original spot, seemingly patiently waiting. In truth, all sorts of thoughts were flashing through her mind, all of them concerning Tianxing. Unknowingly, she even began to worry for Tianxing. After a long while, she finally came back to her senses. When she thought back to those thoughts, her cheeks burned as she thought to herself, "What's wrong with me? I'm worried about a strange and even a little annoying fellow. He's so cold and arrogant. I don't care if he lives or dies." Although that was what she was thinking, she couldn't help but look around again after a short while. She quietly observed the plaza to see if Tianxing would appear. At that moment, a group of black-armored guards from the heaven-punishing race walked over from nearby. There were 6 guards in total, 5 of them wielding halberds while the captain had a long sword at his waist. The 6 guards walked past the crowd, their eyes looking straight ahead, their expressions dignified and arrogant. But the black-armored guard at the very back of the group glanced at God Lord Silver Moon as he walked past her. He even winked at her. This sudden sight caused God Lord Silver Moon's body to tremble and her eyes widened. She almost thought that she was seeing things. But she could clearly see that the guard really had winked at her. "It's him. I can't be wrong. It's definitely him." God Lord Silver Moon instantly recognized him and her mind was reeling with shock. But she immediately came back to her senses and looked around in a somewhat guilty manner. Seeing that the 2 priests and the foreign race experts around them did not notice this detail, her heart finally settled back into her stomach. She stared at the back of the guard, watching him climb the steps into the Heaven Punisher Divine Palace, her heart brimming with anticipation and shock. This guy, when did he leave my battleship? What method did he use to disguise himself as a guard of the heaven-punishing race and enter the heaven-punishing divine palace so openly? This was too crazy. This guy is crazy. There was no doubt that the heaven-punishing guard was Tianxing in disguise. God Lord Silver Moon did not understand his methods, nor could he figure out how he had done it. However, to Tianxing this was a walk in the park for him and he had a lot of experience. When the Silver Moon battleship was about to reach the heaven-punishing divine palace, he quietly left the Silver Moon battleship. He stealthily approached the heaven-punishing divine palace and encountered a patrol team in the Sea of Clouds. The 6 heaven-punishing protectors were all martial sages and they were nothing to him. With a little trick he instantly killed the guard at the end of the team. Then his divine sense entered this guard's body, and he transformed into a heaven-punishing guard. Dong dong dong. With a series of heavy footsteps, Xianxia followed the guard into the heaven-punishing divine palace. In this vast palace with a radius of 1,000 feet, the ground and walls were resplendent and dazzling, and several hundred gemstones and lanterns lit the surroundings. 18 massive pillars were arranged in 3 rows in the middle of the palace. At the head of the hall, there was an incomparably huge, sacred and dignified throne. Xianxia could tell at a glance that this was the throne of the Southern Conquering Marshal. However, the throne was still empty and the Southern Conquering Marshal was nowhere to be seen. In the 4 corners of the hall, there were 8 marshals' personal guards in silver armor. They were all in the martial god realm. Below the marshal's throne stood a purple-robed heaven-punishing expert who appeared to be a military advisor. This person had sinister eyes and exuded the powerful aura of a true god expert. Xianxia could sense that this person was at level 2 true god realm. Thus, he hurriedly withdrew his divine sense and began to cautiously advance. A few moments later the guard passed through the palace, walked up to the purple-robed military advisor and respectfully bowed. "Greetings, General Xianxia." The purple-robed military advisor, who was addressed as General Xianxia, nodded expressionlessly. His dignified gaze swept across the 6 people and finally landed on the guard captain. He asked, "What's the situation outside?" The guard captain cupped his fists and bowed, replying respectfully, "General Xianxia, it's peaceful outside Purple Cloud Star. Now that our tribe rules the entire star field, those lowly commoners have obediently come to pay tribute. Who dares to cause trouble?" General Xianxia nodded expressionlessly and continued to ask, "What about the people in the square? Are they all waiting obediently?" The guard captain hurriedly nodded and said in a disdainful tone, "General, more than 100 lowly commoners from more than 50 worlds are all waiting obediently. The earliest batch of lowly commoners has been waiting for more than half a month. Even so they dare not complain at all, let alone make a ruckus." General Xianxia nodded slightly, stroked his beard with one hand and sneered, "Now the Grand Marshal is still recuperating in Purple Cloud Cave. He will probably be back in a month. Let those lowly commoners wait outside the palace. When the Grand Marshal returns, the Myriad Kingdom God Assembly will begin. By then, let those lowly commoners submit to the Grand Marshal and obediently offer tribute. This will be a surprise for the Grand Marshal." The guard captain hurriedly flattered, "General, you are so thoughtful to come up with the idea of the Myriad Kingdom God Assembly. By then, when the Grand Marshal sees such a grand occasion, his anger will definitely dissipate, and he will even reward you handsomely." General Xianxia was very pleased with these words. After stroking his beard and pondering for a moment, he thought of another idea and sneered, "Since we want to humiliate those lowly commoners, we have to do it thoroughly. Go and announce the news. Let all the lowly commoners kneel outside the palace, hold the tribute with both hands and raise it above their heads. If anyone doesn't do it or slacks off, capture them and torture them as a warning to the others." The guard captain immediately grinned and sneered. He hurriedly saluted and said, "General, this move of yours is really wonderful. Since those lowly commoners have abandoned their dignity and attacked our clan for survival, we will tear their dignity to shreds and trample on them. Only in this way can we let them know how powerful our clan is. Only death awaits those who oppose my clan." That's right, that's right." General Xianxia nodded proudly and waved his hand to signal the guard captain to pass on the order. Thus the guard captain bowed and left the palace. Xianxia and the 4 guards also turned to leave. But at this moment General Xianxia's gaze locked onto Xianxia. He suddenly frowned and shouted, "You, stay here." Xianxia stopped in his tracks and a cold light flashed in his eyes. The other 4 black-armored guards looked at him at the same time, showing sympathy and pity in their eyes. Because they knew that Xianxia was doomed. Chapter 2563. The 4 black-armored guards had always followed General Xianxia and were under his direct command. Therefore they knew a secret. When the heaven-conquering fleet attacked Purple Cloud Planet, they were not only met with resistance from countless experts, but they were also attacked by an ancient giant beast. It was a gigantic ancient divine beast that could cover the sky and the sun. It had the power to destroy heaven and earth. It was rumored that it was the guardian divine beast of Purple Cloud Planet. Its appearance was like a divine bird soaring in the sky. Its entire body was golden and dazzling, even more dazzling than the sun. When it spread its wide wings, it could cover 1,000 miles of the sky. When it waved its huge claws, it could easily destroy the heaven-conquering fleet. When the divine bird spread its wings, it could cross thousands of miles in an instant. It was as fast as the aurora. Therefore, the guardian divine bird was the most difficult to deal with. It was even more powerful than the divine masters of Purple Cloud Planet. If it were not for the guardian divine bird, the Southern Conquering Fleet Marshal would not have spent more than 40 years and sacrificed hundreds of thousands of soldiers to conquer Purple Cloud Planet. After the war, Purple Cloud Planet was enslaved by the Heaven-Conquering Fleet. Many experts had died in battle and the Divine Masters were basically all dead. However, the Guardian Divine Bird had survived. Of course, the Divine Bird had been severely injured and was on the verge of death. The Southern Conquering Fleet Marshal had wanted to kill the Divine Bird to prevent future trouble. However, when he found out about the Divine Bird's background and its true identity, he gave up on the idea. He imprisoned the Divine Bird in the depths of the Divine Palace and used a powerful divine power and divine array to suppress the Divine Bird in the darkness. Then he ordered General Dian Xing to be in charge of this matter. Every 10 days he would send a small amount of golden sunstones to the Divine Bird to replenish its energy and heal its injuries. The purpose was to keep the Divine Bird alive so that its power would not dissipate and it would die from exhaustion. Everyone who knew about this understood the Southern Conquering Fleet Marshal's intention. He wanted to tame the Divine Bird. After all, the Divine Bird's combat power at its peak was comparable to his warship. Moreover, the Divine Bird had intelligence and thought. It could continue to grow and become stronger. The Southern Conquering Fleet Marshal wanted to tame the Divine Bird as a mount so that it would be easier for him to roam the void in the future. However, the Divine Bird had an extremely stubborn personality. Even after being imprisoned for a few years, it still refused to submit and was very irritable. The guards who sent the golden sunstones to it did not have a good ending. More than half of the people were killed by the Divine Birds. Even if a small number of people managed to escape, they were severely injured and crippled. In the past few years, more than 2,000 guards had been killed or injured. Therefore, when General Dian Xing asked Ji Tianxing to stay, the 4 black-armored guards thought of this at the same time. While they pitied Ji Tianxing, they also secretly rejoiced. Fortunately, General Pointing Star didn't choose them. What are you waiting for? Don't you need to do anything? General Dian Xing looked at the 4 black-armored guards and reprimanded them sternly. The 4 black-armored guards immediately shrunk their necks. They hurriedly bowed and left the hall. Only General Dian Xing and Ji Tianxing were left. General Dian Xing took out a black pouch from his interspatial ring and handed it to Ji Tianxing. Here are 10 pieces of golden sun rock. You know what I mean. As he spoke, General Dian Xing stared at him sternly. However, Ji Tianxing was not afraid at all. He said calmly, "General, I don't understand." "Ha ha." General Dian Xing sneered and said in a contemptuous tone, "Boy, I didn't realize that a small guard like you could be so shrewd. You don't even bat an eyelid and you dare to play dumb in front of me?" Although Ji Tianxing did not understand what was going on, he had a bad feeling. General Dian Xing saw that he was silent, so he simply said, "Take these golden sun rocks and send them to the Golden Sun Palace. Give them to the Divine Bird." After that he added, "This is an order. If you dare to disobey, I will kill you now." Ji Tianxing suddenly realized that this task was definitely life-threatening. He showed an appropriate expression of fear. After hesitating for a moment, he slowly reached out and took the pouch. He bowed his head and said, "Yes, sir." After that, he held the black pouch with both hands and turned to walk out of the palace. General Dian Xing stared at his back and sneered. He murmured, "Little fella, you dare to show off in front of me with your little tricks? Good luck to you. Don't be killed by the Divine Bird." Ji Tianxing heard what he said and his eyes became even more gloomy. After leaving the heaven-punishing palace, he walked toward the depths of the palace expressionlessly. On the way, he found a guard in black armor and asked him about the location of the Golden Sun Palace. The guard's expression suddenly changed, revealing a strong sense of dread. However, the guard still showed him the way and patted him on the shoulder. He sighed and said, "Brother, did you offend General Dian Xing?" Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and asked, "What do you mean?" The guard just shook his head and did not explain anything. He quickly walked away. Ji Tianqing was full of doubts and walked toward the Golden Sun Palace. 15 minutes later, he arrived at the gate of the Golden Sun Palace. This magnificent palace was located in the deepest part of the palace complex. It was quiet all around. There were only a few guards in black armor standing guard. No one was moving around. Ji Tianqing arrived in front of the gate and explained his purpose to the guards at the gate. The guards hurriedly opened the door and watched him enter the palace with sympathetic or gloating eyes. The Golden Sun Palace looked sacred from the outside, but the inside was dark. As soon as Ji Tianqing entered the palace, he felt a powerful true god-level array. It was emitting terrifying energy waves. He released his divine sense and immediately saw the situation in the palace. He saw that in the palace, which was thousands of feet wide, there was a stone platform that was hundreds of feet tall. It almost occupied the entire palace. The black and red stone platform was engraved with divine array patterns. It was covered with a layer of dark red light. The inside of the stone platform was sunken like a huge abyss. There were thousands of dark red light pillars that intersected like ropes, forming a huge net. Ji Tianqing stepped toward the high platform and was about to use his divine sense to explore the situation in the abyss. At this moment, a deafening roar suddenly sounded from the abyss. Roar. It was clearly the sound of a bird, but it was like the roar of a divine dragon. It contained a terrifying aura. At the same time, a pair of huge golden eyes slowly opened in the abyss. The terrifying sound waves reverberated in the main hall, shaking the hall and causing the red light to explode. The black armored guards guarding outside the main hall also felt a great pressure despite the thick palace walls and the array. Immediately they all revealed looks of fear. Alas, it seems that kid is finished. Poor guy. He was probably torn to pieces by the divine bird. Tiski. He was unlucky. The black armored guards discussed for a while and quickly returned to normal as if nothing had happened. Chapter 2564. In the gloomy hall, Ji Tianqing stood at the edge of the high platform and looked down at the abyss below him. There was a huge golden figure in the abyss that was enveloped by a dark red light. It was a golden divine bird that was as big as a mountain. It stretched its long neck and raised its head high. It had a sharp beak and a golden crest on its head. Its feathers were like golden dragon scales that glowed with a dark golden light. Its huge golden eyes stared at Ji Tianqing. There was no emotion in its eyes. They were filled with coldness. Ji Tianqing and the golden divine bird looked at each other in silence. However, the abyss's entrance was sealed by the red light, so the golden divine bird could not rush out. If not for this, the golden divine bird would have opened its beak and torn Ji Tianqing to pieces. Even so, the golden divine bird could still unleash a terrifying power that could penetrate the seal of the array and release powerful attacks. In the past few years, more than 2,000 heaven-punishing guards had been killed or injured in this way. After a while, Ji Tianqing took out the black pouch and slowly extended it into the abyss. The golden divine bird's eyes changed. It was quickly accumulating anger and killing intent. Its emotions gradually became irritable. It started to accumulate violent power and was ready to kill Ji Tianqing. To it, the black pouch and the golden sun rock represented hatred and humiliation. However, something that the golden divine bird did not expect happened. Ji Tianqing flipped his palm and a bright golden divine fire burned in his palm. The black pouch was immediately burned to ashes. Even the golden sun rock was burned into lava and was quickly refined by him. This scene stunned the golden divine bird. Deep confusion flashed through its eyes. It could see that this heaven-punishing guard was different from the others. He was very strange. Other than that, it could not see anything else. Therefore, it glared at Ji Tianqing fiercely and opened its beak to chirp a few times. The piercing sound waves reverberated in the main hall. Ji Tianqing did not understand the language of the divine bird, so he did not react. His eyes glowed with golden light as he stared at the abyss without blinking. He was observing the red light as he studied the sealing divine formation. Under his divine eyes, the secrets of the sealing divine formation were quickly exposed. This was a true god-level formation that contained the unique power of the Heaven Punisher race. Its structure was extremely complicated. After 100 breaths of time, Ji Tianqing understood the structure of the array formation. He formed a hand seal and waved his palms, shooting out dozens of golden lights into the grand formation. He began to break the seal. However, the golden divine bird did not understand what he was trying to do. Seeing Ji Tianqing cast a divine spell, it instinctively sensed danger and was instantly enraged. It suddenly spread its huge wings and a golden light burst out from its body. Boom! A terrifying golden hurricane erupted from the abyss and soared into the sky. Even though the golden hurricane was blocked by the countless strands of red light. However, a portion of its power still passed through the sealing divine formation and attacked Ji Tianqing. Swish, 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 swish. More than a dozen golden fragments stabbed toward Ji Tianqing like sharp blades, aiming for his vital points. Ji Tianqing was already prepared. He calmly raised his right palm and swept it toward the golden fragments. Bam, bam, bam. A series of muffled sounds rang out as the golden fragments were instantly reduced to dust. Seeing this, the golden divine bird was stunned. Its eyes were filled with shock. It was even more certain that there was something wrong with this Heaven Punisher. Chirp, chirp, chirp. The golden divine bird let out a low chirp as if questioning Ji Tianqing's identity and intentions. Ji Tianqing ignored it and focused on breaking the divine formation. Half an hour passed without him noticing. The golden divine bird had run out of patience and had stopped chirping. It remained alert and stared sharply at Ji Tianqing, waiting to see what would happen. Finally, Ji Tianqing broke the divine formation and ended his spell. Swish, swish, swish. The thousands of red lights that sealed the entrance to the abyss melted like snow. The abyss had lost its shackles. The divine bird that had been imprisoned for many years finally saw the light of escape. Its body shrank back as it accumulated enough power to destroy heaven and earth. Its body emitted a dark golden glow. In the next moment, it shot out of the abyss like an arrow released from a bow. This charge was earth-shattering and unstoppable. Not to mention the roof of the main hall, even a mountain range would be smashed into powder by it. However, the golden divine bird had just charged out of the abyss and stuck its neck out. Its body was still in the abyss. Ji Tianqing, who was thousands of times smaller than it, casually raised his palm and pressed it down. Instantly, a bright golden palm pressed down from the sky and covered the entire entrance to the abyss. Bam! There was no doubt that the golden divine bird was slapped into the abyss by the giant golden palm and retreated back inside. A deafening sound reverberated in the palace, causing the entire palace to shake. Such an earth-shattering commotion caused the guards outside the hall to dodge repeatedly, and their expressions were filled with shock and fear. Oh my God! Is that divine bird crazy? Such a terrifying commotion. Looks like that brat died without leaving even a trace. Sigh, poor guy. He can actually make the divine bird so violent. He's quite capable. A few guards communicated telepathically and discussed for a while. Then peace was restored. They were already used to such situations. There was no way they would enter the palace to check out the situation. There was no need and they did not have the guts. However, the scene in the palace was completely different from what the guards had imagined. Ji Tianqing stood calmly above the abyss, looking down at the divine bird in the abyss. The divine bird was already severely injured and weak. After being slapped back into the abyss by Ji Tianqing, its strength was even weaker. The golden glow on its body also dimmed. It curled up and raised its head unyieldingly. It glared at Ji Tianqing with rage. Chirp, chirp, chirp. Its sharp beak opened and closed as it questioned Ji Tianqing sternly. Ji Tianqing did not answer. Instead, his spirit left his body and returned to his body. Swoosh. There was a flash of light and he returned to his original appearance. Seeing this, the golden divine bird was stunned. It looked at Ji Tianqing in shock. It could not understand how a black-armored guard of the Heaven Punisher race could suddenly transform into a handsome human in a white robe. That's right. The golden divine bird could recognize that Ji Tianqing was a human. In the ancient times, the golden divine bird had met an almighty of the human race and even received guidance from the almighty of the human race. Because of this, the golden divine bird gradually realized that the human youth before it had come to Gold Sun Palace with an ulterior motive. Most importantly, the human youth had reached the true immortal realm. His strength was unfathomable. It could not defeat him. Chapter 2565. The golden divine bird gradually calmed down and stopped trying to escape. Ji Tianxing then spoke calmly. The golden rock is a top divine bird from the ancient times. Its bloodline is extremely noble, second only to the divine dragon and the phoenix. Until now there are very few golden rocks left. There might not even be 10 of them in all 3,000 worlds. And you are one of them. Ji Tianxing spoke calmly as if he was talking to himself. He looked down at the golden rock in the abyss and said, "If you can understand the human language, perhaps we can talk." The golden rock's golden eyes were filled with shock. It racked its brain for a long time before it had a clue. It used its divine consciousness to say, "The human race. I've seen them before so I can understand a little." It spoke the human language but it was a little shaky and stuttering. "It's good." Ji Tianxing nodded in satisfaction and asked, "Why are you imprisoned here? Tell me your background and story." At the mention of this, the golden rock's eyes flashed with hatred. It used its divine consciousness to reply, "I have always been on Purple Cloud Planet and was good friends with Heavenly Venerable Xiao. Together, we protected the people of Purple Cloud Planet. 50 years ago the heaven-punishing race's fleet attacked Purple Cloud Planet." The golden rock told Ji Tianxing about its identity and experience. Ji Tianxing then knew that the golden rock was the guardian divine beast of Purple Cloud Planet. When Purple Cloud Planet was occupied by the heaven-punishing race's army, Heavenly Venerable Xiao was besieged by the fleet and died. The golden rock was also severely injured but luckily survived. However, it was captured by the southern conquering marshal and imprisoned here. Ji Tianxing's lips curled into a cold smile as he muttered to himself, "The southern conquering marshal is not stupid. He actually recognized you as the ancient divine bird, the golden rock, and imprisoned you here. It seems that he wants to subdue you and make you his beast pet and mount." The golden rock nodded slightly and said, "He did not kill me or save me, but he kept sending people to send me golden sunstones to maintain my strength and life. He wants to humiliate me, destroy my will, and force me to submit." Ji Tianxing shook his head and explained, "No, it's not as troublesome as you think. Now that you're heavily injured and on the verge of death, it's very easy for him to subdue you. I only need to use the Heaven Punisher's soul-controlling secret technique to control your divine soul." However, after he took over Xiao's star, he had more important things to do in person. He had no time to deal with you. A few years ago he was severely injured and had to flee back to the Purple Cloud Star. All these years he's been hiding in the Violet Heaven Cave in seclusion to recuperate, so he has no time to subdue you. However, he would come out of seclusion in another month. At that time, you will definitely be controlled by him and become a puppet of the Heaven Punisher race." The golden rock narrowed its eyes, revealing a look of resentment. It growled, "If that's the case, I'd rather die." Ji Tianxing glanced at it and said with a faint smile, "You didn't disgrace the integrity of the Golden Rock clan, but why do you only want to die? Have you never thought that if you live, Marshal Nan will die?" "What do you mean?" The golden rock's eyes widened as it stared at Ji Tianxing. Ji Tianxing did not answer. He continued to ask, "Golden Rock, do you want revenge?" "Yes." The golden rock nodded without hesitation and said angrily, "This is the only belief that keeps me alive. As long as I can take revenge and kill Marshal Nan, I won't hesitate even if I have to give up my life." "Very good." Ji Tianxing nodded in satisfaction and said, "Then I'll give you a chance to take revenge. Let's work together." Before he could finish, the golden rock looked at him warily and asked, "What do you want to do?" Ji Tianxing smiled and said, "Just like you, I was persecuted by the Heaven Punisher race. Now I'm here to take revenge." The golden rock finally understood. "So, you pretended to be a Heaven Punisher race guard and sneaked into the Heaven Punisher Divine Palace to get close to me? You think too much." Ji Tianxing rolled his eyes at the golden rock and said calmly, "You weren't part of my plan. It was just an accident that I met you. Of course, this accident increased the success rate of my plan." The golden rock was still hesitant and asked, "Why should I believe you? Maybe you're Marshal Nan's lackey and the Heaven Punisher race's accomplice?" Ji Tianxing sneered disdainfully and said, "Golden Rock, you don't have the right to choose. If you don't believe me, I'll restore the seal now and leave. I'll pretend you never saw me." As he spoke, Ji Tianxing raised his hand and was about to cast a spell to restore the sealing divine array. The golden rock immediately became anxious and shouted, "Stop. Let me think about it. Ji Tianqing was not moved at all. Golden light shot out from his palms as he started to cast a spell. The golden rock became even more anxious. After struggling for a while, it quickly shouted, "Stop. I agree with you." Ji Tianqing stopped and said indifferently, "That's a wise decision. Otherwise, I'd have to waste my time talking to you." The golden rock was depressed. It could not see through Ji Tianqing and was even more afraid of him. After a moment of silence, the golden rock tried to ask, "I can work with you, but you have to tell me, what do you plan to do?" Ji Tianqing said calmly, "Marshal Nan is hiding in the Purple Heaven Cave to heal. The Purple Heaven Cave is heavily guarded, so we can't kill our way in. Therefore we can only wait patiently for a month. When the Myriad Kingdom God Conference starts, we'll take action. At that time I'll create chaos outside and kill the Heaven Punisher experts. You'll kill your way out of the Gold Sun Palace and find a chance to sneak up on Marshal Nan. We'll work together." The golden rock was stunned. "This is your plan? Only the two of us dare to fight Marshal Nan and hundreds of Heaven Punisher race martial gods? I thought you had a foolproof plan and many helpers. Are you crazy?" Ji Tianqing said expressionlessly, "It's about quantity, not quantity. If you're afraid of death, then forget it." What a joke. The golden rock was furious. It roared in a deep voice, "The golden rock race has never had anyone who is afraid of death." Ji Tianqing nodded and said, "If that's the case, then it's decided." The golden rock realized that it had been provoked, but it could not change its mind. Therefore it could only remind Qin Haodong, "Your plan is too reckless. I'm severely injured now and can't use much combat strength. How can I kill Marshal Nan?" Ji Tianqing took out a large pile of dawn stones from his spatial ring and threw them in front of the golden rock. "You still have a month. Use these divine stones to heal your injuries. It doesn't matter how much you can recover. After all, you're not the main force to assassinate Marshal Nan." The golden rock was speechless again. It hesitated for a moment before accepting the pile of pitch-black dawn stones. "All right, since I'm going to die anyway, I'll believe you this time. Next, I'll go into seclusion to heal. I'll try my best to recover my injuries and strength." Chapter 2566. After comforting the golden rock, Ji Tianqing started to cast a spell to restore the ceiling formation. Xiao Sui *dream Xiao Sui *A. The golden rock understood his intention and did not try to stop him. After all, there would be other heaven punishing guards coming to deliver the golden sunstones in the next month. The ceiling formation had to be restored to its original state so that no one would notice anything amiss. Of course, with Ji Tianqing's strength and methods, it was easy for him to do something to the ceiling formation. On the surface, there seemed to be nothing wrong with the ceiling divine formation. But in reality, Ji Tianqing told the golden rock how to open it. When the time was right, the golden rock could open the ceiling formation and rush out of the abyss. While he was casting the spell, the golden rock was still a little worried and asked two questions. "What is your name? Will you be hiding in the heaven-punishing divine palace for the next month?" Ji Tianqing did not hide anything and answered honestly, "Just call me Tianqing. I want to do something to the heaven-punishing divine palace so that it will be easier for me to take action in a month. Also, I want to make a trip to the Zero Mainland to create some chaos and distract the heaven-punishing race." The golden rock was relieved and nodded in agreement. "That's more like it. I thought you were really reckless." Ji Tianqing did not reply and silently cast a divine technique. 15 minutes later, the ceiling formation was restored to its original state. Countless strands of dark red light formed a huge net that enveloped the entrance to the abyss. Ji Tianqing was about to turn and leave when he suddenly thought of something and stopped. With his back facing the abyss, he asked calmly, "After this is done, are you willing to leave with me? I have studied the Seventh Forefather's divine technique. It will definitely help you increase your strength and break through to the heaven god realm." The golden rock was stunned. After a moment of silence, it shook its head and said, "If the plan succeeds and the Southern Expedition Marshal is killed, I will definitely stay on the Purple Cloud Star to protect the billions of people. 20,000 years ago, when I broke through to the true god realm, I decided that I would never ascend. What divine realm? What heaven god realm? They are all meaningless to me." Ji Tianqing did not say anything else. His body flashed with golden light, and he turned back into a heaven-punishing guard and walked toward the palace door. A moment later he stepped through the door and left the hall safely. The few black armored guards guarding outside the main hall suddenly revealed a face full of shock, and their eyes widened in disbelief. It wasn't until Ji Tianqing was far away and his figure disappeared under the palace wall in the distance that everyone came back to their senses. Hiss! This guy actually didn't die? Are our eyes playing tricks on us? How could he still be alive? That's not right. The commotion in the main hall earlier was so terrifying, he would have been blasted into smithereens. A few black armored guards gasped in shock, discussing with each other in shock. No one could understand what was going on. For the next few days, the heaven-punishing divine palace was very peaceful. Ji Tianqing used the identity of a black armored guard to move around the heaven-punishing divine palace, placing array formation materials everywhere. With his strength and methods, if there were no true divinity powerhouses monitoring him, he would absolutely not be able to see any flaws. After 10 days, Ji Tianqing had secretly planted more than 500 seeds in every corner of the heaven-punishing divine palace. The so-called seeds were either sacred weapons, dawn stones, or powerful talismans. In short, they were all materials that could be used to form arrays. At the crucial moment, they could explode with destructive power and destroy the heaven-punishing divine palace. Furthermore, Ji Tianqing had a clear understanding of the situation in the heaven-punishing divine palace. Inside and outside the heaven-punishing divine palace, there were more than 10,000 heaven-punishing divine palace guards, and they were all martial sages. Furthermore, there were more than 700 martial gods. They were the personal guards of the captain of the guards, the captain of the ship, and Marshal Nanzheng. As for the true divinity realm powerhouse, there was only General Dianxing. After all, after reaching the true divinity realm, one would be able to activate the laws of heaven and earth and fly up to the upper world. There were only a few true divinities who were willing to stay in the mortal world and conquer the various stars. As such, the defensive power of the heaven-punishing divine palace could be said to be extremely strong. If Ji Tianqing acted rashly, he would definitely be in a desperate situation and his life would be in danger. He had chosen to endure. He would wait until a month later, when the myriad countries' gods gathering opened, to find a way to kill Marshal Nanzheng. As long as he killed Marshal Nanzheng, the other martial gods and martial sages would not be a concern. On the 12th night, Ji Tianqing quietly left the heaven-punishing divine palace. He passed through the white sea of clouds and took out the Tianqing battleship. Bai Long was already bored from waiting. He immediately steered the battleship and headed straight for the Zero mainland. The heaven-punishing divine palace was above the sea of clouds and it was very far from the Zero mainland. Even with the speed of the Tianqing battleship, it would take 2 days to reach the Zero mainland. During the journey, Bai Long asked Ji Tianqing, "Master, Marshal Nanzheng is not in the heaven-punishing divine palace. Why don't you take this opportunity to destroy the entire heaven-punishing divine palace?" Ji Tianqing said earnestly, "If we destroy the heaven-punishing divine palace, the heaven-punishing divine palace can be rebuilt. If we kill a few hundred martial gods from the heaven-punishing divine palace, they will have more martial gods to reinforce them. Only by patiently waiting for the right time to kill Marshal Nanzheng can we disrupt the heaven-punishing divine palace's plans and prevent them from dominating the entire Purple Cloud galaxy. After all, there are countless martial gods, but only 1 in 10,000 true god experts." Bai Long nodded to indicate that he understood. Then he asked in confusion, "Since that is the case, we can just hide in the heaven-punishing divine palace. Why do we still need to go to the Zero mainland?" Ji Tianqing explained calmly, "Master has already investigated. There are as many as 2,000 martial gods stationed in the Purple Cloud galaxy. 1/3 of them are guarding the heaven-punishing divine palace. The remaining martial gods are scattered across the various continents. The heaven-punishing divine palace has tight defenses. With Marshal Nanjing there, it will be very difficult to deal with. Thus, Master can only send you to the Zero mainland and create as much chaos as possible to attract a large number of martial gods there. The fewer martial gods guarding the heaven-punishing divine palace, the higher the chances of Master assassinating Marshal Nanjing." Bai Long was stunned. Then he smiled bitterly and said, "This disciple understands. To put it bluntly, you want us to be cannon fodder and attract their firepower?" Bai Long originally thought that Ji Tianqing would console him and encourage him. However, to his surprise, Ji Tianqing nodded expressionlessly and said, "Yes, it's good that you understand." Pif! Bai Long almost vomited blood. He covered his chest with one hand and pretended to be heartbroken. He said in an aggrieved manner, "Master, can't you at least say a few words of comfort? Even if it's just to trick me, it's fine. You are so straightforward. You have really hurt this disciple's heart." Tianxing rolled his eyes at Bai Long and said unhappily, "Don't put on airs. How can you hide your little thoughts from Master? Actually, you have already guessed Master's plan. You are itching and looking forward to it. Isn't bringing 3 divine beasts to cause trouble what you are looking forward to the most? Don't deny it. Your heart is beating faster and your blood is flowing faster. You can't hold it in anymore." Bai Long did not feel embarrassed when his true thoughts were exposed. Instead, he laughed loudly and said, Master knows me best. That's right. This disciple has been itching for a long time and is ready to go all out." Chapter 2567. Bai Long was not a law-abiding person. He had never been one. Xiao Ruyao. To put it bluntly, this fellow was actually a warmonger. More than 1,000 years ago, Tianxing had already seen through him. Ever since Bai Long had recovered to the martial god realm, he had not participated in any major battles. He had no place to use all kinds of schemes and tricks, so he had long been itching for a fight. He had even been despised by Qian Yu and Black Dragon for several years because he had not participated in the battle against the Southern Marshal. Bai Long remembered it in his heart and had always wanted to find an opportunity to prove himself. Otherwise, how could he convince the masses in the future? This time he would go to the Zero Mainland to assassinate the Heaven Punisher and create chaos. This was the opportunity he had been dreaming of. 2 days passed quickly. The Tianqing battleship activated the invisibility divine array and remained invisible as it landed in the middle of the Zero Mainland. Before this, Tianqing had done his research and had a basic understanding of the Zero Mainland. This was the most prosperous continent on the Purple Cloud Star. There were 5 divine kingdoms, more than 20 billion people and dozens of races. After the Heaven Punisher had occupied the Purple Cloud Star, most of the captains and guards had been stationed on this continent. After several years of development, the Zero Mainland had already settled down. Now that the Heaven Punisher had control of the situation, no one dared to resist. The Tianqing battleship landed near the capital of the Fallen Star Divine Kingdom. Coincidentally, the Fallen Star Divine Kingdom was holding a grand ceremony. The Heaven Punisher had enslaved the Divine Kingdom for 6 years and wanted to select a group of experts from the slaves to train as loyal lackeys. The experts who passed the test would have their divine souls controlled by the Heaven Punisher and become loyal puppets. Moreover, these powerhouses were already very famous in the martial arts world and had a lot of commanding power. Once they became the lackeys of the Heaven Punisher, they would be able to better manage the people of the Divine Kingdom. A huge arena was built in the capital. Hundreds of thousands of commoners had gathered around the arena to watch the selection. A total of several hundred martial Dao experts participated in the selection. After many rounds of elimination, only 20 experts would remain. In addition, more than 30 martial god realm captains personally oversaw the arena. It was currently evening and the blood-red sun was about to set. Tianqing and Bai Long disguised themselves and sneaked into the capital city, rushing to the arena in the city. When they arrived at the bottom of the arena, the two of them observed for a moment. After figuring out the situation, the two of them acted decisively. In the arena, the 2 martial saints were fighting fiercely. Light and shadows filled the sky as they fought, causing countless people to cheer and cheer. More than 30 silver-armored captains were scattered around the arena, watching this scene with indifferent expressions. Right at this moment, a shocking sword light suddenly lit up in the crowd below the arena. Shua! The dazzling golden sword over 10,000 feet in length slashed toward the dozen or so captains on the eastern side of the arena with the power to destroy all things. The sudden turn of events scared the hundreds of thousands of people out of their wits. The several hundred black-armored guards realized that something was amiss and wanted to intervene, but it was already too late. The dozen or so captains in the arena did not guard against anyone causing trouble. By the time they realized that danger was approaching, it was too late to avoid it. Kaboom! With a deafening explosion, the huge sword split the wide ring into 2 halves. 8 captains in silver armor were swept by the sword light. They let out shrill screams as their flesh and blood splattered all over the sky. The other captains in silver armor were also sent flying by the violent sword chi and fell into the ruins in a sorry state. The huge arena was destroyed on the spot. The two martial saints who were fighting fiercely were also killed by the sword chi. The powerful shock wave carried countless fragments of the sword chi and splashed in all directions. Instantly, the area within 100 miles was in chaos. The sky was also covered by the dazzling golden light. The hundreds of thousands of people who were watching screamed in horror and despair. They panicked and fled in all directions. Panic spread and the people were screaming. The 20 or so captains in silver armor who were lucky enough to survive locked onto the attacker and charged toward the white-robed young man with their swords and sabers. Shwa, shwa, shwa. The captains swung their swords and sabers and unleashed their strongest power. They slashed out dark red light that covered the sky and earth. Thousands of light blades rained down like a torrential downpour, covering the area within a 100-mile radius. In this area, other than the white-robed young man, there were hundreds of thousands of people who could not escape in time. However, to the captains of the Heaven Punishers, these hundreds of thousands of people were slaves. Their lives were worse than pigs and dogs. As long as they could kill the white-robed young man, so what if they destroyed the entire capital city? Boom, 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 boom. The red light blades that covered the sky and earth struck the white-robed young man. There was a deafening explosion. A terrifying dark red shockwave spread out in all directions. Hundreds of thousands of people were killed on the spot. They were all reduced to dust. However, the white-robed young man stood in his original spot calmly. He did not even take half a step back. Even though he had used his physical body to withstand the attacks of the captains, he was not injured at all. Oh my God! Is that guy a monster? Are our eyes playing tricks on us? How can he be safe and sound? It must be an illusion. He must have used an illusion technique. Everyone, don't panic. Surround this place and kill him together. No matter who he is, he will definitely die. The 28 captains of the silver-armored captains shouted one after another. Then they spread out and formed a 200-mile circle around the white-robed young man. The white-robed young man was still calm. He raised his left hand expressionlessly and slapped out a few mountain-sized dragon and elephant shadows. He waved the black sword in his right hand and slashed out hundreds of dazzling golden sword radiances. Bam, bam, bam. The dragon and elephant shadows descended from the sky and slammed into the 10 captains of the silver-armored captains. The area within a 100-mile radius was reduced to ruins. The 10 captains were killed on the spot. Their bodies were smashed into a rain of blood. Hundreds of dazzling golden sword radiances enveloped the bodies of the dozen captains like a rain of arrows. With a series of sizzling sounds, the burly bodies of the silver-armored captains were pierced and sliced into pieces by the sword radiances. Thus, 24 of the 28 captains died on the spot. They all died without a complete corpse. Their bodies were reduced to dust. The remaining 4 captains who were lucky enough to survive were also severely injured. They turned around and fled in horror. They could tell that the white-robed young man was not a martial god. He was an unfathomable and extremely powerful true god expert. Only General Dianxing and the Southern Expedition Marshal could deal with this person. Therefore, the 4 captains fled in different directions. They rushed into the sky in a panic. They wanted to escape from the fallen star's divine kingdom and report back to the heaven-punishing divine palace immediately. However, as soon as the 4 captains fled into the sky, they were intercepted and killed. The white-robed young man charged over with a sword. He smashed one of the captains with a punch and pierced another captain's chest with a sword. The other 2 captains were also stopped by a handsome young man with a demonic temperament. "Hey, where are you running to? Take my heaven-destroying, earth-destroying fist." The devilish young man shouted angrily. He raised his fists and punched at the 2 captains. Chapter 2568. Bam, 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 bam. 2 deafening explosions rang out. The 2 captains in silver armor were smashed into pieces on the spot by the huge white dragon claw. Blood rained down from the sky. It was a ghastly sight under the setting sun. At this point, more than 30 captains on the battlefield were all dead. There were only a few thousand black-armored guards left. Many of them had died or were injured. They were in a dilemma. Everyone was filled with fear as they fled into the distance with horrified expressions. Should they flee from the capital city? They did not dare to do so. They were afraid that they would be punished. Should they charge forward and attack the white-robed young man and the strange young man? They did not dare to do so. Hence they could only surround the ruins. They held their swords and sabers and were on guard. Taking advantage of this opportunity, hundreds of thousands of people fled the ruins in all directions. The place quieted down. Ji Tianxing and Bai Long flew into the sky and looked down at the people calmly. I'll give you one day to call all the experts in the fallen star's holy kingdom here. Ji Tianxing's face was cold as he shouted sternly. His deep voice reverberated in the surroundings. The black-armored guards turned pale and were filled with fear. Bai Long sneered and shouted proudly, "Trash from the Heaven Punisher tribe. None of you can fight. I'll wait for you here for one day. Call all your men here so that I can kill all of you in one go. Remember, you only have one day. I won't wait for you after that." Like Ji Tianxing, Bai Long spoke in the Heaven Punisher tribe's language. The thousands of guards around the ruins heard him clearly. Immediately, everyone was filled with grief and indignation, shame and anger. However, they were weak and did not dare to act rashly. Otherwise, they would be killed by Bai Long's palm. After weighing the pros and cons, the black-armored guards chose to bear with it. Many guard captains took out their communication jade slips and sent out messages one after another. Soon, the news of what had happened in the capital city spread to all parts of the fallen star's holy kingdom. The captains of the various forces and cities rushed to the capital city as fast as they could. Half an hour later, the few experts guarding the capital city's imperial palace led a large group of guards to the battlefield in the capital city. There were a total of 6 captains in the martial god realm. All of them were at LV4 or LV5 of the martial god realm. They were the real rulers of the fallen star's divine nation. They had been stationed in the imperial palace and controlled several great empires in the divine nation. Normally they wouldn't show up unless something major happened. This included the selection of leaders from the slaves, and they were not present. However, the news of the arena being destroyed and more than 30 captains being killed alarmed all of them. The 6 captains led 300 guards and rushed to the scene aggressively. Their killing intent soared to the sky. However, what awaited them was death. White Dragon had long been unable to restrain his murderous intent, and he was rubbing his fists. When everyone arrived at the scene, he did not give the other party a chance to speak at all. He waved his hand and used his ultimate technique. Wild Dragon goes to sea. The White Dragon waved its palms, releasing a golden light that blotted out the sky and covered the earth. It condensed into 9 huge golden dragons that charged towards the 6 captains and the 300 guards. Boom, 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 boom. After a series of loud explosions, more than half of the 300 guards were killed. 4 of the 6 captains were killed in an instant. The other 2 were severely injured and fell into the ruins. Ji Tianxing was about to draw his sword when White Dragon beat him to it. He laughed and said, "Master, these nobodies are not worthy of your attention. Just leave them to me." As he spoke, White Dragon dashed out like an aurora and punched out a sky full of light shadows. With another series of muffled sounds, the 2 captains and over 100 guards were quickly turned into dregs by the White Dragon. The destructive shockwave swept through the entire city. The bustling city within a radius of 300 miles was turned into ruins. Smoke and dust rose everywhere. Even among the thousands of guards, a few hundred of them were killed on the spot. The survivors fled the ruins in a panic and hid a few hundred miles away. They did not dare to come any closer. White Dragon flew up into the sky and returned to Ji Tianxing's side. "Master, our methods are too violent and overbearing. Do you think the others will dare to come?" White Dragon was very worried. He and Ji Tianxing's methods were too powerful. What if they scared the other experts of the Heaven Punisher? If the other captains did not dare to come, wouldn't he and Ji Tianxing have waited for nothing? Ji Tianxing shook his head and said with certainty, "Don't worry. The other captains will definitely come. This is the Heaven Punisher's territory. Even if they know that they are going to die, they will not let the Heaven Punisher suffer such humiliation." White Dragon was immediately relieved. He said expectantly, "That's great. Previously we were very passive in the 5 Elements world. We were constantly invaded by the Heaven Punisher. It was really frustrating. Now that we are in the Heaven Punisher's territory, we can do whatever we want and kill them. This feels so good." Ji Tianxing said expressionlessly, "It's better to enjoy together than to enjoy alone." Qian Yu, Black Dragon and Lan Kun are also very excited. They are all saying that they want to help you. White Dragon's expression immediately changed. He quickly waved his hand and said, "Master, that won't do. This kind of limelight. Bah, this kind of difficult and dangerous thing, of course I will do it with Master. Qian Yu and Black Dragon are still very young. How can we let them take such a risk?" A smile flashed across Ji Tianqing's eyes and he ignored White Dragon. Time passed quietly. The sun quickly set behind the mountains and night fell. Only Ji Tianqing and White Dragon were in the ruins within a 300-mile radius. Around the ruins there were thousands of black-armored guards standing guard. There were also people constantly sending messages. The more than 1 million survivors had long since fled in all directions, far away from this place. The night wind blew, stirring up the sand on the ground and filling the night sky. The atmosphere was exceptionally bleak. Ji Tianqing stood in the sky with his eyes closed. He was not in a hurry. White Dragon, on the other hand, was looking around. His expression was anxious and impatient. Every once in a while he would even mutter to himself, "Hey, why are these bastards hiding like turtles? Why don't they show up now? My sword has been thirsting for blood for a long time. Why haven't the bastards of the Heaven Punishers come to their deaths yet?" For the entire night, there was no movement around the ruins. The White Dragon was bored of waiting, so it simply lay down in the sky, humming a little tune, and closed its eyes to rest. It had a carefree attitude. Finally, at noon the next day, the sun was high in the sky and a strong wind blew around the ruins. Sand and stones flew everywhere. One after another, tall figures rushed over from all directions. Further away there were many black heaven-punishing battleships. They were ferocious as they approached. Seeing this, Ji Tianqing opened his eyes. He drew the sword of burial of heaven with his right hand. White Dragon also stood up with a whoosh. He smiled with anticipation. "Ah, my long wait was not in vain. The dishes are finally served. I'm going to use my 40-meter-long sword to connect their flesh and blood and fill the sky with blood." Chapter 2569. There were more than 40 Heaven Punisher experts who had rushed to the ruins of the capital city. They were all captains at the martial god realm. In addition, there were more than 40 battleships carrying more than 3,000 black-armored guards. The martial gods and the battleships had all arrived within a day. However, they had already contacted each other and discussed a strategy. No one acted alone. They waited for the others to arrive before joining forces and surrounding the ruins. Clang, 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 clang. More than 40 battleships stopped in the sky around the ruins. They opened their side armor and revealed rows of cannons. The black cannons were aimed at Ji Tianqing and Bai Long, who were in the middle of the ruins. At the same time, more than 40 captains at the martial god realm held swords, sabers and spears. They roared and charged. "Kill them! Despicable commoners, how dare you resist? Go to hell! Those who oppose the Heaven Punisher tribe will be doomed." As they roared, more than 40 captains shone with red light. They slashed out light blades that covered the sky. Instantly, thousands of light blades covered the sky, covering the light of the scorching sun. Ji Tianqing and Bai Long were under the light blades. They were surrounded by a rain of arrows and there was nowhere for them to hide. However, the two of them did not plan to hide. Ji Tianqing's eyes turned cold. His body lit up with golden light and he instantly turned into a giant that was 100 feet tall. He ignored the attacks from the captains. He held the huge sword of burial of heaven with both hands and slashed at the two captains valiantly. Bang, 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 bang. More than 100 dark red light blades hit him and there was a series of loud bangs. However, the light blades collapsed and he was not injured at all. He did not even lose a hair. However, the two giant swords that he had slashed out had locked onto the two captains. They could not escape. Boom, crack. The two captains were killed on the spot. Their bodies exploded into dust and blood rained down. This scene shocked many of the captains. Everyone's expression changed drastically. Their eyes widened, revealing a deep sense of fear. Ji Tianqing did not stop. His body turned into a golden phantom and charged into the crowd. He was like a ferocious tiger in a flock of sheep. He held the sword of burial of heaven with both hands and slashed wildly. His aura was violent, his posture was domineering, and his moves were unparalleled and unstoppable. None of the captains could withstand even one of his attacks. Anyone who was touched by the sword of burial of heaven or touched by the sword light would be sent flying. In light cases their limbs would be severed while in heavy cases, their bodies would disintegrate and they would die on the spot. At this moment Ji Tianxing was like a golden whirlwind. Everywhere he went, a rain of blood would be swept up. He was extremely fierce. On the other side, Bai Long's body was also emitting white light. Holding the domineering green dragon crescent blade, he ferociously charged into the crowd. Wherever he went, saber light splattered and divine power overflowed like a surging torrent. The captains whose auras were locked onto by him were often chopped into pieces by the green dragon crescent blade in less than 3 moves. Both the master and disciple were high-spirited and full of fighting spirit. More than 40 captains at the martial god realm were forced into a panic. They retreated in fear and trepidation. Just now their morale was high, but now they were like stray dogs. They could only run and wail. The 40 or so warships around the ruins had originally formed an encirclement to prevent Ji Tianxing and Bai Long from escaping. The warships would not fire unless it was a critical moment. Many of the captains wanted to kill Ji Tianxing and Bai Long with their own hands and cut them into pieces. However, the situation in front of them was shocking and unbelievable. The 40 or so warships hesitated for a long time before finally making up their minds and firing. Boom, boom, boom. In an instant, earth-shattering dark red pillars of light blasted toward the ruined battlefield with destructive power. Ji Tianxing was chasing after 2 captains, but he was hit by hundreds of pillars of light. Bang, bang, bang. With muffled sounds, he was shaken until his entire body trembled and he retreated thousands of feet. Even so, he was not injured. His unparalleled defense was on full display. His body lit up with golden light, forming a huge vortex. The dark red pillars of light that blasted from all directions were swallowed by the golden vortex and quickly dissolved. He was not affected by the warship's bombardment at all and continued to chase after the 2 captains with his sword. On the other side, Bai Long was also hit by dozens of dark red pillars of light and flew back in a sorry state. However, he had also neutralized most of the power and was not injured. Damn it! I'll turn you into scrap metal immediately. Bai Long spat. He held the green dragon crescent blade with both hands and rushed out of the ruins in a flash. He arrived above a warship. Open! Bai Long roared like a bell. He held the green dragon crescent blade with both hands and slashed down with all his might. Suddenly, the blade emitted a bright golden light and condensed into a giant blade that was thousands of feet long. Boom! Crack! The giant golden blade slashed down fiercely. The thousands of feet-long warship was instantly cut in half and countless pieces flew out. More than 100 black-armored heaven-punishing guards were immediately flung out and scattered in the sky. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Bai Long swung the green dragon crescent blade again and again. Soon the black-armored guards were cut into pieces. After quickly finishing off one warship, he attacked another warship with his blade. The warship not far away saw Bai Long slash the warship in half with his blade and immediately turned around and fled in fright. Bai Long teleported and chased after it. He raised his blade and slashed down. Boom! Crack! The second warship was also cut in half. Then the third, fourth, fifth, one warship after another was destroyed by the green dragon crescent blade. Bai Long was so excited that he did not care that his body was covered in the blood of the heaven punishers. He was like an evil god, surrounded by endless murderous intent. However, compared to Ji Tianxing, he was not terrifying and ferocious enough. His aura was also not domineering enough. Ji Tianxing, who was thousands of feet tall, was like an invincible god of war. He rampaged through the battlefield and crushed everything. Even if more than 30 captains surrounded him, they could not trap him, let alone injure him. On the contrary, every time he slashed out with his sword, he would take the life of a captain. Blood splattered everywhere. This battle, which had a great disparity in numbers, only lasted for 15 minutes before it ended. The Heaven Punishers could not believe the final result. They were shocked and terrified. More than 2,000 members of the Heaven Punisher race against 2 humans. In the end, all the Heaven Punishers were killed. More than 40 warships were also destroyed. However, Ji Tianxing and Bai Long were not injured. This was simply an unprecedented and shocking feat. When the light and the rain of blood dissipated, Ji Tianxing and Bai Long had already left. The 2 of them left the Fallen Star's divine nation as quickly as possible and headed for another divine nation. After all, they had killed 80% of the Heaven Punishers guarding the Fallen Star's divine nation. This earth-shattering battle with such a tragic result would soon alert the heaven-punishing divine palace. Moreover, the other divine nations on the Zero mainland would also receive the news. As long as the rulers of those divine nations were not stupid, they would definitely come up with a countermeasure and put in all their effort to defend themselves. Ji Tianxing wanted to create chaos before the news spread. Chapter 2570. Changhai Holy Kingdom was the closest to Fallen Star's Holy Kingdom. Bai Long steered the battleship and took 2 days to reach Changhai Holy Kingdom. By then, Changhai Holy Kingdom had already received the news from Fallen Star's Holy Kingdom. The capital city had been destroyed and turned into ruins. More than 80 Martial God Realm captains and close to 2,000 Martial Sage Realm warriors had been killed. Such shocking news caused a huge commotion in the Changhai Divine Nation. Of course, it was not just Changhai Holy Kingdom. The other 2 holy kingdoms had also received the news. As such, the entire Zero mainland was in a state of panic. The captains and warriors of the Heaven Punisher tribe were all in danger. No one knew when those 2 mysterious outsider experts would descend upon them. When Tianxing's battleship reached holy capital of Changhai Holy Kingdom, more than 50 Martial God Realm captains had gathered in the city to discuss countermeasures. Holy capital already had more than 1,000 Martial Sage Realm Black Armor Guards. Now that they had mobilized more than 1,000 Martial Sage Realm Black Armor Guards from the surrounding cities, the total number of Black Armor Guards had reached 2,000. Even so, the captains were still afraid and trembling in fear. In the dazzling Holy Palace, the 50 captains had been discussing for half a day, but they were unable to come up with a perfect plan. Someone suggested that they should leave Changhai Holy Kingdom and lie low for a while. This suggestion was immediately rejected by the captains. Zero mainland and the entire Purple Cloud Star were the Heaven Punisher tribe's territory. How could they give up the entire Holy Kingdom just because of 2 foreign tribe elites? Wouldn't this be a laughingstock that would go down in history for 1,000 years? Most of the captains agreed that they could not retreat for the sake of the Heaven Punisher tribe's dignity and honor. They had to gather all the captains in Holy Capital and set up an inescapable trap inside and outside Holy Capital to wait for the other party to come and die. Everyone knew that Changhai Holy Kingdom was the closest to Fallen Star's Holy Kingdom and would most likely become the next target of the foreign tribe elites. As such, after the captains had come up with a plan, they immediately carried it out. Other than the 4 most powerful captains guarding the Holy Palace, the rest of the captains rushed to the surroundings of Holy Capital to set up holy arrays and traps. After a day of work, the captains set up 12 arrays in Holy Capital. 6 of them were defensive arrays and 6 of them were extremely powerful holy arrays. Moreover, close to 2,000 black armored guards were also on standby, maintaining a state of alert at all times. However, after everyone spent the night in a tense atmosphere, the inside and outside of Fairy's capital remained calm. The expected attacks and massacres did not come. In the dead of night, the night sky was as dark as ink, shrouded by thick dark clouds. Everything was silent between heaven and earth. An ordinary-looking captain in silver armor was cruising outside the divine capital with a pitch-black saber at his waist. He circled the 1,000-foot-tall city wall and walked alone in the dark night. Not only did they have to patrol the city walls, but they also had to investigate the situation outside the city. As long as there was even the slightest movement, he would immediately send out a signal to warn the captains in the city. But just as he passed the corner of the wall and passed through the darkness, an invisible divine soul shockwave suddenly came from the darkness. Buzz! The captain was caught off guard and suffered a heavy blow to his soul. He only felt a rumble in his mind and was stunned on the spot. Before he could come back to his senses, a large hand reached out from the darkness and grabbed his neck. The silver-armored captain was lifted up. He struggled with all his might, wanting to resist and break free, but he was powerless. He tried his best, but he could not make a sound. Only gurgling sounds came from his throat. Invisible divine soul power surged out from the large hand and violently attacked his soul. Soon, the captain's soul was shattered, and his consciousness fell into eternal darkness. Then Ji Tianxing walked out of the darkness and possessed the captain's body. In the blink of an eye, he had become the captain of the Heaven Punisher race. Not only that, but he also took away the captain's divine soul memories. After standing in the darkness for a while, he refined the captain's memories and obtained a lot of useful information. Captain Barker? That sounds terrible. Luckily, I only need this identity for one night. Ji Tianxing muttered softly and continued to travel in the darkness, patrolling the city walls. 2 hours later he had patrolled the city walls. He knew the distribution of the soldiers on the city walls and the number of black armored guards like the back of his hand. Along the way he also removed a dozen array nodes and destroyed 4 defensive arrays. No one noticed any of this. Only when the battle started and the divine arrays could not be activated would people realize that something was wrong. At midnight, Ji Tianxing took out his identity token and swaggered through the city gates into the divine capital. With Captain Barker's identity he could do whatever he wanted in the divine capital. Other than the 4 strongest and most powerful captains, no one could restrain him. Thus, Ji Tianxing openly entered the divine palace and began his assassination journey. A silver-armored captain had just returned to his secret room to rest after a busy day of setting up the divine arrays. Whoosh! A figure suddenly appeared in the darkness in the corner of the secret room and stabbed out with a mysterious pitch-black sword. In an instant the captain's chest was pierced by the divine sword and blood spurted out. On his chest the scales with a few golden patterns were shattered, and the captain died on the spot. Even when the captain fell he still could not die in peace. He did not know who the assassin was. 100 breaths later, Ji Tianxing used the law of space to directly pass through the thick wall, ignoring the protection of the divine arrays, and appeared in another secret room. A silver-armored captain sat cross-legged in the middle of the secret room, recuperating and quickly recovering his divine power. He sensed danger and suddenly opened his eyes, only to see a silver-armored captain in front of him. "Barker, what are you doing?" The captain furrowed his brows, looking at Ji Tianxing with both anger and confusion as he asked. However, he was answered by a pitch-black sword. Poof! The pitch-black cold sword of burial of heaven instantly pierced through the captain's chest and blood spurted out. Another captain died without even being able to call for help. Ji Tianxing's figure flashed and disappeared into the darkness. He went to find his next target. In the next hour he constantly traveled through the divine palace, entering and exiting the various palaces like a ghost. One after another the captains in the martial god realm died under his surprise attacks. A total of 12 captains were killed but no one could resist. They did not even have time to send out a signal. At the same time Bai Long was moving silently within the walls of the divine capital. Like Ji Tianxing he was carrying out an assassination mission. The difference was that Ji Tianxing was assassinating the captains in the divine palace. Bai Long was assassinating the captains and commanders of the black-armored guards within the city walls. As time passed, the lives of many heaven-seeking cultivators were taken away without anyone noticing. The night deepened and the dark clouds in the sky became thicker. Chapter 2571. Soon 4 hours had passed. Dawn finally arrived and a ray of light appeared on the horizon. The captain and the heaven-punishing guards who were guarding the divine capital finally stopped worrying and being on guard for an entire night. Many people relaxed, thinking that the darkest night was over. Daytime was approaching and the 2 mysterious foreign race experts would not choose to attack during the day. However, just when everyone thought that this was impossible, a great battle broke out in the divine palace. The massacre had finally arrived. When Ji Tianxing used the law of space and entered a secret room to assassinate one of the captains, he sensed that something was amiss. The captain sensed the danger in advance and did not hesitate to send out a warning signal. Even though Ji Tianxing had made his move in time and killed the captain with one move, Ji Tianxing was still able to do so. However, the dark red pillar of light flew into the sky, exploding with a deafening boom that shook the area within 100 miles. In an instant the entire divine palace and more than half of the divine capital were alarmed. Countless captains and soldiers of the divine capital were tense as they rushed to the scene of the incident with their Kenshin weapons. A great battle had unavoidably broken out. 30 captains and more than 400 soldiers of the divine capital surrounded Ji Tianxing. Sword light and sword light filled the sky and the dazzling dark red pillar of light poured down like a flood. Ji Tianxing bathed in the red light but he did not retreat at all. He roared angrily as his body bloomed with dazzling golden light, and he immediately transformed into a giant. He held the giant burial of heaven sword that was more than 1,000 feet long and started a massacre in the divine palace. He was unstoppable. Like a golden hurricane that could destroy heaven and earth, it rampaged through the divine palace and swept through the various palaces. Anyone who was touched by the golden hurricane, regardless of whether they were captains or soldiers of the divine capital, was shredded into pieces. They died without a complete corpse. Even the numerous magnificent, lofty and dignified palaces had transformed into disorderly ruins, and the ground was covered in rubble and crushed stones. In just a few moments, more than a dozen captains and more than 200 soldiers of the divine capital died tragically under the burial of Heaven's sword. The surviving captains panicked. They roared and roared, calling for other captains to come to their aid. However, more than half of the divine palace had been destroyed. The earth-shattering sounds of battle spread throughout half of the divine capital. However, there was no sign of any captain coming to their aid. Only a few hundred soldiers of the heaven-conquering army rushed over, looking panicked. Everyone finally realized that the captains who had never shown up had long been assassinated. Moreover, he had died without a sound, without leaving a trace. The more than 1,000 soldiers guarding the city walls were also ambushed by a few foreign race experts. A handsome and devilishly handsome young man was leading 3 divine beasts that were as huge as mountains on a killing spree on the city wall. The more than 1,000 soldiers of the Heaven Expedition had already suffered heavy casualties. They could barely take care of themselves, so how could they still have the ability to help the divine palace? Fear and despair filled the hearts of many heaven-seeking experts, causing their morale to plummet. This earth-shattering great battle quickly entered its conclusion, becoming a great battle of pursuit. Tianxia was alone. He held the burial of Heaven's sword and chased after the captains and more than 100 soldiers of the heaven-conquering army. The entire divine palace was destroyed and turned into ruins. As the battlefield shifted, the buildings and streets around the divine palace were also turned into ashes by the aftermath of the battle. Such a terrifying great battle had already woken up all the citizens in the city. Nearly 2 million citizens fled in panic, rushing toward the 4 city gates like a flood. Only a few puppets whose divine souls were controlled by the heaven-conquering army went against the flow and rushed toward the battlefield to help the heaven-conquering army. All the citizens in the city thought that the divine capital's city walls were high, the city gates were tightly shut, and there was a powerful defense divine array. Even if they fled to the city gates, they might not be able to escape the divine capital. In the end, they would definitely die in the chaotic battle. However, when they reached the city gates, they were pleasantly surprised to find that the city gates had already been destroyed. Even the towering city walls, which were hundreds of feet tall, had collapsed into ruins. One after another, gigantic and powerful divine beasts were wantonly killing the black-armored soldiers of the heaven-conquering army. The city guards and the heaven-conquering army had no time to care about themselves. They were all busy running for their lives. No one could stop the fleeing citizens. They crossed the ruined city walls like a flood and hurriedly fled the divine capital. An hour later, 90% of the citizens in the divine capital had fled. The entire divine capital had been destroyed and turned into ruins. Smoke and dust filled the sky. At this moment, the great battle finally ended. The dozens of captains guarding the divine capital had all been killed. 90% of the 2,000 heaven-conquering army soldiers had also been killed. Only a few took advantage of the chaos to escape. Tianxia was very satisfied with this result. He brought Bai Long, Qian Yu, Long Kuan and Black Dragon onto the battleship and left at lightning speed. After leaving the divine capital of the Qianghai divine nation, Tianxia's battleship headed north toward another divine nation. Along the way, the 3 divine beasts circulated their energy to recover and replenish their energy. In the great battle earlier, they had suffered some minor injuries and had used up a lot of their divine power. Only Tianxia and Bai Long were unscathed. The divine power they had used up was quickly recovered. Bai Long steered the battleship and flew across the sky at lightning speed. At the same time, he sent a voice transmission to Tianxia. "Master, I've basically figured out the situation. There are dozens of captains and 2,000 to 3,000 heaven-conquering army soldiers in the 4 divine nations of the Zero mainland. As long as the Southern Expedition Marshal doesn't attack and we're not surrounded by hundreds of captains, we can kill the heaven-conquering army soldiers one by one. In my opinion, we just have to change places and we'll be able to kill the 4 divine nations in 10 days. Tianxia sat in the secret chamber and circulated his energy to recuperate. He closed his eyes and replied, "It's not as simple as you think. We've taken the initiative in the previous 2 attacks. When we attacked suddenly, The heaven-conquering army soldiers guarding the falling star and Shanghai divine nations were killed before they could even resist. However, it won't be so easy after this. Bai Long didn't think much of it. He smiled confidently and said, Master, you're too humble. With your true immortal realm strength, you can already fight the Southern Expedition Marshal head-on. On the Zero mainland, who could stop you? Even if it's an army of thousands, you can still kill them all and sweep everything before you. Moreover, you've also grasped the law of space. Can be said that you can come and go without a trace. It's impossible to guard against. How about this? We don't have to go through so much trouble. Don't think about the myriad kingdom god assembly and just sweep through everything. Ji Tianxing explained calmly, killing the heaven-conquering army soldiers on the Zero mainland is just to cause chaos and weaken the heaven-conquering army's core strength. We'll also restrain the heaven-conquering divine palace's experts. Our final goal isn't to kill these nobodies. Bai Long nodded and said, I understand. Your goal is the Southern Expedition Marshal. Since it's not easy for you, we'll follow the original plan. First, we'll cause chaos on the Zero mainland. We'll stay behind to restrain the heaven-conquering army. You can return to the heaven-conquering divine palace to assassinate the Southern Expedition Marshal. Chapter 2572. While Ji Tianxing and the others were on their way to the Flying Deity Nation, the news of the destruction of Deity's capital spread across the Zero mainland. Coupled with the destruction of Fallen Star Deity Nation's capital city, the news of these two incidents shocked the world. All the heaven punishers on the mainland were filled with grief and indignation as they shared a common enemy. On the other hand, the people and martial artists of various races who had been enslaved by the heaven punishers were overjoyed. They saw the hope of regaining their freedom and worshipped the two mysterious powerhouses to the extreme. There were even various rumors and news spreading among the people. Some said that the two mysterious powerhouses were senior brothers of Heavenly Venerate Zishao and had been cultivating in another galaxy. After learning that Purple Cloud Planet had been invaded and Heavenly Venerate Zishao had fallen, the two powerhouses had rushed back to seek revenge. Some said that the two were the mysterious guardians of Purple Cloud Planet who had lived in seclusion for tens of thousands of years. The two guardians would not appear until it was time to change the world. Now that the calamity had descended and Purple Cloud Planet had fallen into darkness, the two guardians had started a massacre to revive the planet. Some said that the two powerhouses were already deities. They were originally the people of Purple Cloud Planet and had ascended to the upper world tens of thousands of years ago. After learning that Purple Cloud Planet was in trouble, the two deities had descended to save the people. In short, all sorts of rumors were spreading. They were strange and bizarre, making it difficult for people to tell the truth. 2 days later, Tianxing's battleship arrived at the Flying Deity Nation. The situation in the Flying Deity Nation was very tense. The dozens of martial gods guarding the various forces and cities had rushed to Deity's capital. 2,000 of the black-armored guards guarding the major cities were also sent to the divine capital to meet the enemy. There were more than 70 martial god realm ship captains and 3,000 martial sage realm soldiers gathered in the holy capital, which had a radius of 300 miles. Such a powerful force was enough to make any true god tremble in fear. Even so, the sky above Deity's capital was still gloomy and gloomy. In the depths of Deity's capital, in the most sacred and glorious Deity's palace, the atmosphere was heavy and oppressive. That was because everyone knew that those two mysterious experts of unknown origin possessed the power to destroy the heavens and earth. Even with dozens of captains and 3,000 guards, they did not have much chance of winning. At that moment, in the Deity's palace conference hall, 74 captains in silver armor gathered in the main hall. Everyone stood in 3 rows, their postures very respectful. Sitting on the main seat was a general in golden armor who was at LV8 martial god realm. This person's name was Gutai, and he had always been the grand commander of the heaven-punishing divine palace. A few days ago, the news of the destruction of the fallen star's divine kingdom's capital had reached the heaven-punishing divine palace. General Dian Xing was furious and immediately found General Gutai to discuss countermeasures. General Gutai volunteered to lead 50 captains at the martial god realm to the falling star's divine kingdom to kill the mysterious expert. However, General Dian Xing was far-sighted and did not agree to Gutai's request. He guessed that the two mysterious powerhouses would flee after the attack and look for their next target. In just 3 days, the divine capital of the Changhai divine nation was destroyed, and dozens of captains were killed. When the news reached the heaven-punishing divine palace, it confirmed General Dianxing's guess. General Gutai was convinced and asked General Dianxing how to deal with it. General Dianxing ordered him to lead a few captains to the flying divine nation and set up an inescapable net in the divine capital. At the same time, General Dianxing also sent 50 captains to the Hanlong divine nation to protect the divine capital. He was sure that the mysterious expert's next target was either the flying divine nation or the Hanlong divine nation. Last night, General Gutai arrived at the flying divine nation and entered the divine capital. The more than 60 captains guarding the divine capital were in a state of panic. The arrival of General Gutai reassured everyone, making the captains feel much more at ease. But even so, everyone's hearts were still heavy, and they were suppressed to the point that they couldn't breathe. Therefore, General Gutai gathered all the captains for a meeting in the main hall to boost their morale. Brave and fearless captains, you have proven your strength and courage by standing out from hundreds of millions of soldiers and becoming the captain of a ship. General Gutai sat boldly on his throne and spoke passionately. I believe that when a strong enemy comes, none of us will shrink back. Just 2 foreign race powerhouses are enough to make all of you so afraid? For thousands of years, we have conquered hundreds of worlds and dominated half of the purple firmament starfield. What kind of danger have we not seen? What kind of foreign race powerhouses have we not seen? Not to mention the mortal bodies, we have even killed the gods of the upper realm. General Gutai's heroic voice echoed in the main hall, inspiring the hearts of the captains. The pressure on the captains was reduced a lot. The blood in their bodies flowed faster and their hearts were filled with fighting spirit. General Gutai saw that the effect was good. All the captains showed a hopeful look. He continued, don't worry everyone. With me here, those 2 foreign race beasts will not dare to invade. It would be best if they didn't know what was good for them and dared to attack Shendu. Haven't we already set up an inescapable net? We can seal those 2 foreign race beasts here and chop them into pieces. General Gutai stood up, raised his arms and shouted loudly. The captains in the main hall were stirred up and their fighting spirit was high. However, at this moment, a figure stepped into the main hall at an untimely time. Thump, thump, thump. An ordinary-looking warrior in black armor stepped into the main hall with heavy steps. This person lowered his head and pressed on the pitch-black battle sword at his waist. He walked straight to the middle of the main hall. Dozens of captains looked at him and sized him up with a strange look. General Gutai's speech was interrupted. He frowned and looked coldly at the black-armored guard. He scolded in a deep voice, "Bastard! Can't you see that I'm having a discussion with the captains?" Seeing that General Gutai was angry, a silver-armored captain in the crowd quickly scolded, "You blind thing, get out of here. Do you want to die?" However, the black-armored guard turned a deaf ear to him and continued to walk toward General Gutai. This scene caused countless captains to frown, and they all began to reprimand. There were even 2 captains who wanted to use their capturing techniques to take down the black-armored guard. General Gutai's eyes flashed with anger, but he remained silent for the time being. He wanted to wait for the captains to deal with the blind guard before continuing his passionate speech. However, in the next moment something unexpected happened. The seemingly ordinary black-armored guard walked to the front of the throne. Suddenly he raised his head and revealed a mocking sneer. A group of people who are about to die still have the mood to boast? As he spoke, the black-armored guard suddenly pulled out the mysterious black sword at his waist. He slashed out a dazzling golden sword light that could split heaven and earth and attacked General Gutai. Chapter 2573. When the black-armored guard drew his sword and unleashed the dazzling golden sword radiance, General Gutai realized that there was something wrong with this person. The Heaven Punishers cultivated a special power. Both their sword radiance and sword radiance were red in color. Even if they reached the martial god realm, their power would only turn from red to purple and then to black. What the hell was the dazzling golden sword radiance? Must be an alien race. However, when General Gutai realized this, it was already too late. Boom! With a deafening sound, he was struck by the dazzling golden sword radiance. He screamed and flew backward. The incomparably violent impact caused him to shatter the throne and pierce through the thick palace walls. He flew out for thousands of meters before coming to a stop. General Gutai fell into the ruins. He struggled for a while before getting up. He felt a chill all over his body. His chest and abdomen were cold. When he looked down, he realized that there was a huge wound below his chest. His internal organs and blood gushed out of the wound and stained the ruins. Through the hideous wound, one could see the broken bones inside. General Gutai was shocked and furious. He immediately roared, "Damn bastard! I'll tear you to pieces." However, his roar was drowned out by the loud sound coming from the meeting hall. Boom! The startled captains finally came to their senses. They realized that the black-armored guard was an alien race in disguise. They all drew their swords and sabers and were about to attack the black-armored guard. However, the black-armored guard had already used his ultimate skill and launched an attack first. Dragon Elephant Divine Fist. He waved his left fist and unleashed a huge shadow of a dragon elephant. It blasted toward the left side of the hall and enveloped dozens of captains. Life Rising Sword. He held the mysterious black sword in his right hand and unleashed a giant golden sword radiance that was thousands of feet long. It slashed toward the captains on the right side of the hall. A deafening sound exploded. In the next moment, dozens of captains were sent flying to the left and right. The earth-shattering power shattered the resplendent conference hall, turning it into a pile of rubble. The entire divine palace began to tremble and dense cracks appeared on the ground. Such a commotion alerted countless patrolling guards, as well as the soldiers of the Heaven Conqueror who were lying in ambush inside and outside the divine palace. Thousands of soldiers dressed in black armor waved their weapons and roared as they charged toward the conference hall. However, a demonic young man rushed out from the divine palaces in all directions, accompanied by 3 divine beasts that were as huge as mountains. The young man in white dragged a huge long saber, and valiantly slashed out a monstrous saber light. The 3 divine beasts also displayed their strengths, releasing ice spears, black water and light blades that blotted out the sky and covered the earth, attacking the black-armored guards. Boom 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 boom. A deafening explosion erupted, reverberating endlessly between heaven and earth. Violent shockwaves spread out, flattening dozens of palaces and affecting a radius of 100 miles. The entire divine palace was razed to the ground. Half of the divine capital was affected and turned into ruins. A great battle that shook the heavens and the earth began. General Gutai led more than 70 captains and madly besieged Xianxia, his master, and the 3 divine beasts. More than 2,000 black-armored guards formed a huge encirclement outside the ruins, and joined forces to release destructive attacks. Colorful and dazzling magic lights covered the entire divine capital. The destructive shockwaves soon razed the divine capital to the ground. Hundreds of thousands of civilians who did not manage to escape in time were killed by the shockwaves. More than 1 million survivors fled the divine capital in panic, scattering in all directions. This battle lasted for a full hour before it ended. The divine capital was completely destroyed. General Gutai also died under the sword of the burial of heaven, turning into ashes. 95% of the captains were killed. Only 2 of them escaped in advance and luckily survived. More than 90% of the nearly 3,000 black-armored guards were also killed. The 200 or so survivors had long since scattered and disappeared without a trace. The flames of war and smoke were still lingering in the sky, but Xianxia, his master, and the 3 divine beasts had already left quietly. Not long after, the news of the divine capital's destruction spread across the continent. The civilians of various races were in an uproar again. They were so shocked that their blood surged and they were wild with excitement. In particular, General Gutai and more than 70 captains guarding the divine capital could not escape the fate of being killed. This made everyone realize that the strength of the 2 mysterious powerhouses had reached an extremely terrifying level. They must have surpassed the martial god realm and reached the true god realm. That was a true deity. As a result, the various rumors that were already widely spread on the continent became even more reasonable. The civilians of various races had been enslaved by the Heaven Punishers for a few years, and they had accumulated a great amount of resentment. In the past, they were afraid of being suppressed and did not dare to resist. Now that the gods had come to save them and killed a large number of Heaven Punishers, their resentment exploded. The morale of the civilians of various races and the various martial Dao forces was high. They spontaneously joined forces and started to resist. Therefore, countless martial artists in the various divine kingdoms rose up in revolt. Riot after riot sprung up like bamboo shoots after the rain, and it was in full swing. There were not many heaven punishers guarding the various divine kingdoms to begin with. They also had to suppress the slaves who resisted and quell the chaos that was surging out. The heaven punishers were extremely busy and they were severely lacking in manpower. They all reported to the heaven punishers and asked for reinforcements. The Han-Long divine kingdom was slightly further away. When Ji Tianxing and the others arrived, it was already 3 days later. To their surprise, the divine capital of the Han-Long divine kingdom had become an empty city. Of course, 2 million civilians and a few 100,000 slaves were still in the city. There were a few martial god realm captains and more than 200 martial sage realm guards in the city. On the surface, the divine capital looked peaceful and there was nothing out of the ordinary. Ji Tianxing used a secret technique to sneak into the divine capital. After investigating, he discovered this. When Bai Long found out about this, he was both surprised and depressed. F***ck. Aren't the bastards of the heaven punishers always domineering and cool? This is their territory. They don't dare to fight and have all abandoned the city and fled? Qian Yu stretched out his paw and patted Bai Long's shoulder. He pretended to be deep and said, Xiao Bai, with your intelligence, you should have guessed this long ago. We have swept our way here and crushed 3 divine kingdoms. No matter how many martial gods and heaven punishers there were, we killed them all. The heaven punishers guarding the Han-Long divine kingdom are not stupid. They are already scared out of their wits. Why would they stay and wait for death? Bai Long lifted his hand and pushed Qian Yu's paw away. He rolled his eyes and said, Little fox, what do you think we should do? Qian Yu revealed his signature sly smile and said meaningfully, What we do next will depend on what old Ji thinks. However, based on my understanding of him, he will return to the heaven punishers alone. We will stay and cause trouble in the Han-Long divine kingdom. We will assassinate the heaven punishers and attract their attention. Chapter 2574. Qian Yu had just revealed a smug smile when the white dragon rolled its eyes at it. Do I even need you to guess? Didn't I already tell you? Then he cupped his fists at Ji Tianxing and said, Master, don't worry and return to the deity Punisher Palace. Leave the rest to us. We'll definitely turn the Han-Long divine nation upside down and shock the entire Zero mainland. To his surprise, Ji Tianxing waved his hand and interrupted him. Don't worry. There are still 20 days until the Myriad Kingdoms Divine Assembly. I still have to create a bigger storm. The Han-Long divine nation already has dozens of martial gods. Adding the men sent by General Dian Xing, there should be more than 100 of them. There will be 3 to 5 generals among them who are at least 7th-level martial gods. They won't really give up on the divine capital. They'll just hide in the dark and wait for us to show up before attacking. With your strength, you'll most likely die if you let your guard down and get surrounded by the deity punishers. Although White Dragon was very confident in his strength, he did not refute. However, he didn't refute Ji Tianxing's analysis and judgment. Master, you mean, the captains and more than 200 black-armored guards in the divine capital are bait left behind by the deity punishers? If that's the case, what should we do? Ji Tianxing nodded and pointed at the divine capital. He said, If they don't want to fight, we'll find a way to force them to fight. If they want to surround us, we'll set up an ambush here and catch them all in one fell swoop. White Dragon and Qian Yu thought for a moment and immediately understood what he meant. Soon they sneaked into the divine capital and began their operation. After a night, they had set up 2 powerful divine arrays under the divine capital. One of them was the 1,000-sword execution formation and the other was the 9 development space shattering formation. Both of them were true god-level formations. After they were set up, Ji Tianxing began to assassinate the captains in the city while White Dragon went to kill the black-armored guards. Early in the morning, the sun rose slowly. The captains in the divine palace were quickly killed by Ji Tianxing. More than half of the black-armored guards guarding the city gates were also slaughtered by White Dragon and the 3 divine beasts. The commotion caused by the battle was so great that it woke up all the people in the divine capital. Countless people panicked and rushed toward the city gate, wanting to escape from the divine capital. White Dragon and the 3 divine beasts followed Ji Tianxing's instructions and opened the 4 city gates. In just 2 hours, over 1 million civilians had been evacuated. Only a few of the puppets whose souls had been controlled by the heaven punishers remained in the divine capital. They fearlessly surrounded Ji Tianxing, Bai Long and the others. Without a doubt, these puppets were quickly killed. The battle soon stopped and the chaotic divine capital gradually calmed down. More than half of the divine palace had been destroyed. The 4 city gates and several sections of the city wall had also been reduced to rubble. Ji Tianxing held the sword of burial of heaven and stood at the highest point of the divine palace. He looked down at the entire divine capital and waited silently. The white dragon and the 4 divine beasts were hiding in various parts of the city, quietly accumulating power. About an hour later, a large black shadow appeared in the sky around the divine capital. There were at least 100 black battleships coming from all directions like rolling black clouds. The battleships were as fast as lightning. In a short while they had surrounded the divine capital. All the battleships opened their side decks, revealing black cannons that were aimed at the city. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. More than 100 captains in silver armor stepped out of the battleships and flew into the sky above the divine capital. There were 4 people in the lead. All of them wore dark golden armor and their auras were imposing and domineering. Without a doubt, these were 4 powerful generals. A total of 130 captains surrounded Ji Tianxing under the lead of the 4 generals. All of them had smug, ferocious smiles on their faces. Their eyes were filled with murderous intent. The 4 generals in the lead sized up Ji Tianxing and laughed smugly. There are rumors all over the continent that you are some kind of deity who has come down to earth. I didn't expect you to be so weak. Ah, you little B*****. Our efforts were not in vain. You are finally here. Hee hee. You lowly worm. You will not be able to escape this time. You are going to die. You little B*****. You have killed so many of my people. Today I will cut you into 1,000 pieces. The 4 generals were smug as if victory was within their grasp. The truth was just as Ji Tianxing had guessed. This was a trap that the elites had set up. They had pretended to abandon the city and escape, leaving only a few captains behind to act as bait. When Ji Tianxing and the rest of the people entered the divine capital, they had already gathered all the captains and warriors to surround the divine capital. This way they would have the upper hand and would be able to fight Ji Tianxing and the rest of the people. The 4 generals and the captains were full of confidence as they fantasized about how they would torture and kill Ji Tianxing. Ji Tianxing looked calm. He glanced at the crowd and said regretfully, "You have planned for so long and you have only gathered so few people? This is so disappointing." The number of Einherjar realm elites was similar to what he had estimated. The people in the lead were also just 4 generals. There was not even a single true god realm powerhouse. This indeed made Ji Tianxing feel somewhat regretful. Initially he had thought that General Dianxing would come personally and he would be able to use this opportunity to kill him. When the 4 generals saw his reaction, they frowned and their hearts skipped a beat. This little B**** has obviously fallen into our trap and is surrounded by us. How can he be so calm? No. We have so many people and we have the support of the fleet. There is no reason for him to not be afraid. How can he be so arrogant? This guy must be bluffing. He must be terrified but he doesn't dare to show it. That is why he is acting so arrogant. Similar thoughts flashed through the minds of the 4 generals. Ji Tianxing said coldly, "If you have any other tricks up your sleeves, why don't you use them all at once? If not, you won't have the chance." As he spoke, his body emitted dazzling golden light and he turned into a giant that was 100 feet tall. Even the sword of burial of heaven in his hand had turned into a giant sword that was 100 feet long. It shone with a cold black light. Endless murderous intent and violent aura exploded from his body and swept across the entire fairy's capital. The 4 generals panicked as they were suppressed by his aura. They were terrified and uneasy. "Quick! Kill him! Let's attack together and tear him into pieces. Don't let him escape." Subconsciously, the 4 generals let out a furious roar and pulled out their swords, spears, swords and halberds. They slashed out sharp red light blades that filled the sky and attacked Ji Tianxing together. The expressions of the 100 or so captains changed drastically as well. They hurriedly brandished their swords and unleashed their ultimate killing moves to attack Ji Tianxing. Thousands of red light blades, like a flood that blotted out the sky, instantly engulfed Ji Tianxing. No one could withstand the combined attack of 100 Einherjar realm elites. Not even a true god. Chapter 2575. They watched as Ji Tianxing was drowned by the overwhelming torrent. Even if he did not die, he would be severely injured. However, at this critical moment, An unbelievable scene occurred. Swoosh. His figure suddenly became blurry, leaving only an afterimage. His real body was nowhere to be found. The sky was filled with saber light and sword shadows slashed down, shattering the afterimage into pieces. Then endless red light blades slashed into the divine palace. Rumble. The entire divine palace collapsed on the spot, turning into ruins. Smoke and dust flew up into the sky. Not only the divine palace, but the ground within a radius of 100 miles also collapsed, revealing a huge pit. Half of the divine capital was destroyed. Tens of thousands of houses and palaces were turned into debris. The combined attack of so many experts was so destructive. However, the 4 generals and more than 100 captains all frowned and looked around sharply. Whether in the sky or in the ruins, there was no trace of Xianxia. Many captains were puzzled and started whispering to each other. Strange, where did that little bastard go? Could it be that he was killed by us in an instant and turned into ashes? Isn't he a true god expert? How could he be so weak and be killed by us in one move? So what if he's a true god? With so many of us working together, we can even kill a true god, right? Just as everyone was discussing, a huge golden figure appeared out of thin air outside the encirclement. Sword sweeping all directions. The golden giant roared with a thunderous voice. He held the huge sword with both hands and slashed down. Suddenly, more than 100 golden swords bloomed and shrouded the figures of more than 30 captains. Bam, bam, bam. With a series of muffled explosions, more than 30 captains exploded on the spot. Their bodies turned into a rain of blood. The 4 generals and more than 100 captains suddenly widened their eyes, revealing an extremely horrified expression. Oh my God! How could he be safe and sound and escape from the encirclement? This is impossible. More than 100 of us worked together and destroyed the area he was in. Even the alternate space was shattered. How could he teleport and escape? What method did he use? Is he really only a true god? These thoughts flashed through everyone's minds at the same time. The 4 generals were the first to come back to their senses. They hurriedly waved their palms and shot out a red light that soared into the sky, forming a few patterns. That was the signal to attack. In the sky 100 miles away, more than 100 battleships saw the attack signal and activated their formations without hesitation, firing their divine cannons. Boom 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 boom. All the battleships simultaneously blasted out hundreds of dark red light pillars, which instantly pierced through the sky and headed straight for Xianxia. More than 10,000 light pillars covered the sky for 300 miles, covering the entire divine capital. Xianxia's aura had been locked onto by the divine cannon. Logically speaking, there was no way for him to escape. As long as he was struck by over 10,000 light pillars, even if he was a peak true god, he would die without a doubt. However, a scene that caused everyone to be even more shocked appeared. When more than 10,000 light pillars were about to drown him, his figure blurred again and disappeared into thin air. Boom 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 boom. In the next moment, the pillars of light collided with each other, causing a loud bang that shook the clouds to reverberate endlessly between heaven and earth. Xianxia's figure was destroyed, but his real body was nowhere to be found. Destructive shockwaves spread out in all directions and engulfed the entire divine capital. In the blink of an eye, the entire divine capital had been razed to the ground, causing smoke and dust to rise into the air. 4 generals and more than 100 captains were also sent flying by the shockwaves and scattered in all directions. Before they could recover from their shock, a golden light suddenly shot up into the sky from the ruins. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. The dazzling golden light shot up into the sky and immediately formed a light shield that covered the entire sky. It was like a giant bowl with a radius of 300 miles that was placed upside down on the ruins of divine capital, suppressing all the battleships and experts of the Heaven Punisher. The golden light shield was very thick, like an indestructible fortress. After the array was activated, it released a terrifying force that suppressed the entire space. The Heaven Punisher battleships that were floating in the sky suddenly fell down like dumplings and landed heavily on the ruins. More than 100 captains and 4 generals were also suppressed in the ruins, struggling with great difficulty. This sudden turn of events caused many experts to be inexplicably shocked. A bad premonition arose in their hearts. ****, that **** starred has set up a divine array in the city. He is too despicable. We were supposed to ambush him, but now we have fallen into his trap. Everyone, don't panic. This is only a sealing array. As long as we remain calm, we will be able to break it. The 4 generals calmed down and shouted loudly, stabilizing the morale of the army. However, what happened next caused them to break down completely. Tens of thousands of golden light swords formed in the golden light shield that covered the entire sky, exuding a sharp and violent energy fluctuation. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. More than 90,000 golden light swords were arranged in a mysterious way and started to fly around, killing the Heaven Punisher battleships and experts. Instantly, the area within a radius of 300 miles was covered by the golden light. The sword radiance flashed and intertwined with each other, cutting the sky into pieces and crushing the ground into powder. Every battleship would be slashed by more than 1,000 sword radiances within a breath's time. Every martial god realm captain was engulfed by the golden sword radiances and suffered endless attacks. Bam, 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 bam. The Heaven Punisher battleships were slashed into pieces by the sword radiances and exploded. There were dozens to hundreds of fully armed black armor guards in each battleship. When the battleships were slashed into pieces by the sword radiances, most of the black armor guards were not spared and were crushed into pieces. A few survivors fell from the sky, but before they could land on the ground, they were crushed into pieces by the sword radiances. Not only were the battleships destroyed, but even the martial god realm captains could not withstand the sword radiances. Bam, bam, bam. In just 10 breaths, more than 30 captains had been crushed into pieces. The remaining captains were also covered in wounds and broken limbs, but they were still holding on in desperation. Even the 4 generals were in a miserable state. Their flesh and bones were torn apart by the sword radiances and they were covered in blood. Everyone was terrified. Their hearts were filled with fear and despair. They roared and charged toward the golden light barrier, trying to escape the divine capital. However, Bai Long and the 3 divine beasts charged out. They rampaged in the sky and started a massacre. Ji Tianxing's figure was also flickering. He killed one captain after another with his sword. The world was in chaos. Bright and dazzling golden light mixed with the blood that filled the sky, outlining a strange scene. In just 15 minutes, the god-killing sword formation stopped working. All the battleships, captains and black armor guards were killed. None of them were spared. Only 3 generals were still alive. However, their bodies were broken and they were on the verge of death. Chapter 2576. The 3 generals stood in the sky, blood gushing out of their bodies. They looked down at the ground below, their eyes filled with despair. The once glorious divine capital had long since disappeared. It had turned into a huge crater. The pit was filled with dust and gravel. Silver armor fragments and black warship wreckage were scattered around. Everything was over. Their meticulously planned scheme had been crushed just like that. 130 warships, their captains and more than 3,000 soldiers of the heavenly expedition had been reduced to ashes. Such a heavy blow had never been dealt before. The facts had proven that the white-robed foreign race expert was unbelievably powerful. Other than a true god, no one could subdue him. Even if more than 100 martial gods worked together, it would be useless. The 3 generals knew that they were going to die, so they gave up on the idea of escaping. They used their last bit of divine power to self-destruct. However, Ji Tianxing waved his hand and activated the second array. 9 development space shattering array. Swoosh. White light surged out of the deep pit that had a radius of 200 miles, forming a huge tornado that engulfed the 3 generals. That white tornado was condensed from the power of space and it could cut and destroy everything. The 3 generals were instantly killed. Their bodies disintegrated into millions of dust particles and dissipated into the air. However, the tornado did not dissipate. It continued to destroy everything in the ruins. The armor fragments of the captains and the wreckage of the warships were all reduced to dust by the tornado. Ji Tianxing did not take another look. He left with White Dragon and the 3 divine beasts. When they stepped onto Tianxing's warship and left, the tornado had already wiped out all traces and gradually dissipated. The divine capital of the Han Long divine nation was destroyed. Not even the broken walls were left. Only a huge pit was left. More than 100 captains and thousands of soldiers of the heavenly expedition, including the 4 generals, were all killed. The news spread like wildfire and quickly spread across the Zero mainland. The surviving experts of the heavenly expedition in the 4 divine nations had completely collapsed. They were all panicking. No one knew when the butcher's knife would fall on their heads. The civilians of the major races and forces, on the other hand, were overjoyed and excited. 80% of the Heaven Punisher experts guarding the 4 divine kingdoms had been killed. The remaining experts of the Heaven's Path had also become birds that were startled by the mere twang of a bow. They were already unable to take care of themselves. The people of various countries rose up in revolt, erupting with an even more intense wave of resistance. They swore to break free from the Heaven Punisher's slavery and regain their freedom. For a time, the flames of war broke out everywhere on the Zero Continent, setting the prairie ablaze. Even though the Heaven-Punishing Divine Palace had received the news and sent out a large number of Heaven-Punishing warriors led by hundreds of captains, they did not go to suppress the chaos in the various countries. The captains and soldiers of the Heaven Expedition were ordered to search for the traces of the mysterious elite. They swore to find him. After all, the 2 mysterious powerhouses had gone missing after the battle in the Hanlong Divine Kingdom. 5 whole days passed and the mysterious expert did not show his face again. At the same time, White Dragon, Blue Kuan, Qianyu and Black Dragon had already left the Zero mainland. Under Ji Tianxing's instructions, they crossed the incomparably dangerous Sky Sea and arrived at another continent. Next, they would carry out an assassination on that continent. They could weaken the core strength of the Heaven Punisher and restrain the experts of the Heaven Punisher Divine Palace. Ji Tianxing had also returned to the Heaven Punisher Divine Palace. He disguised himself as a black-armored guard and infiltrated the Heaven Punisher Divine Palace to secretly gather information. The current Heaven Punisher Divine Palace was not as heavily guarded as before. An invisible heavy atmosphere pervaded the palace. A layer of haze shrouded the hearts of all the experts of the Heaven Punisher Divine Palace. They were filled with grief, indignation and helplessness. General Dianxing was also busy and did not have time to care about the defenses of the Heaven Punisher Divine Palace. He had even put aside the matter of the 10,000 Countries God Conference. In order to search for the 2 foreign race experts, he had sent out more than 100 captains and more than 1,000 Heaven Punisher Divine Palace soldiers. The Heaven Punisher Divine Palace's defenses had been reduced by half. However, the most infuriating thing was that no matter how General Dianxing deployed his troops, he could not find any trace of the mysterious expert. The atmosphere in the Heaven Punisher Divine Palace was stifling. Even the experts of various races participating in the 10,000 Countries God Conference could feel that something was amiss. More than 150 experts from various great worlds had been kneeling outside the conference hall with their hands raised high above their heads. For half a month, no one dared to leave their original spot or make a ruckus. However, everyone saw the Heaven Punisher Divine Palace's experts entering and leaving with anxious and gloomy expressions. Naturally, they knew that something big had happened. Although everyone did not show it on their faces, they were secretly discussing this matter. Doesn't everyone feel that the atmosphere in the Heaven Punisher Divine Palace is becoming more and more strange? That's right. Those captains and guards used to be so arrogant and full of themselves. Now they are all dejected and depressed. I don't know if anyone has noticed that the number of people entering and leaving the Heaven Punisher Divine Palace has decreased by half over the past 10 days. Humph. Looking at the unlucky faces of those bastards, I know that they are in trouble. Yesterday, I heard from a few guards that General Dianxing was furious and sent out another 20 captains to look for something. The Purple Cloud Planet is the Heaven Punisher Divine Palace's territory. What has happened to make the Heaven Punisher Divine Palace so nervous? Could it be that the people of the Purple Cloud Planet have joined forces to fight back against the Heaven Punisher Divine Palace's enslavement? The martial gods from different worlds carefully communicated with one another. God Lord Silvermoon expressionlessly kneeled on the ground, her hands holding a treasure box above her head. She could hear the discussions of the people around her. Even though she only understood part of it, she could also sense that the Heaven Punisher Divine Palace was in trouble. When she thought of this, she couldn't help but think of that white figure, that arrogant and conceited human youth. That detestable fellow. Ever since I recognized him while he was pretending to be a guard, he hasn't shown his face again. Half a month has passed and I wonder what he's doing? Could the trouble the Heaven Punisher Divine Palace have encountered have something to do with him? God Lord Silvermoon's thoughts were running wild as she speculated. At this moment, a group of black-armored Heaven Punisher guards walked over from the distance. The martial gods immediately went on guard and shut their mouths to maintain their silence. God Lord Silvermoon heard the footsteps and instinctively turned to look. Her gaze swept across the guards and landed on the last black-armored guard. Suddenly, a glint flashed in her eyes. It's him. He's finally appeared again. This thought flashed through God Lord Silvermoon's mind. At the same time, the black-armored guard raised his head and calmly looked at her. As their eyes met, God Lord Silvermoon could clearly sense the encouragement in his eyes. God Lord Silvermoon's heart warmed and she couldn't help but send a message. Hey! Where have you been for the last half a month? Chapter 2577. Only she and the guard could hear God Lord Silvermoon's voice transmission. The black-armored guard expressionlessly walked across the plaza toward the conference hall. At the same time he messaged in the language of the moon spirit race. I'm not called Hey. I'm Xianxia. God Lord Silvermoon angrily glared at him and messaged back. You're still fussing about this at a time like this? Let me ask you, what in the world happened to the Heaven Punishing race to make them so nervous? And where have you been all this time? Does the Heaven Punishing race matter have anything to do with you? Xianxia was forced to admit that God Lord Silvermoon's intuition and judgment were very accurate. He had no intention of hiding the truth, so he straightforwardly said, I personally went to the Zero Continent and killed 80% of the Heaven Punishing experts guarding the 4 divine kingdoms. What? God Lord Silvermoon's body trembled, her eyes going so wide that they almost fell out of their sockets. But she quickly came back to her senses and restrained her shock. She messaged, Scoundrel, will you die if you don't brag? What's going on? Hurry and speak. As the two conversed, Xianxia and the guard passed through the crowd and onto the steps. He pretended not to hear God Lord Silvermoon's question, nor did he explain. God Lord Silvermoon stared at his back as he entered the conference hall, but she still did not get an answer, causing her to become rather angry. That damn scoundrel. Not a word of truth comes out of his mouth. How could I have been so obsessed that I believed his words? God Lord Silvermoon silently cursed, both regretful and angry. But once she calmed down she couldn't help but think back to Xianxia's words. She repeated those words over and over in her mind several times. After thinking for a few moments she hesitated, thinking to herself, that scoundrel's tone and eyes didn't seem like he was bragging at all. It seemed like he was telling the truth. Could he really be telling the truth? Did he really go to the Zero Continent and slaughter countless Heaven Punishing experts? How could that be? The Zero Continent is the territory of the Heaven Punishing race and has as many experts as the clouds. But his origins are mysterious, his strength is formidable, and he has all sorts of divine abilities and methods. Perhaps it really is possible. The more God Lord Silvermoon thought about it, the more confused he became. He didn't dare to believe it, but he was also somewhat expectant. She was forced to the point where her heart itched unbearably. She couldn't wait to rush into the great council hall, grab Xianxia and interrogate him face to face. However, reason prevailed over impulse. She gradually suppressed her complicated thoughts and continued to kneel in the square, waiting silently. About a quarter of an hour later, several black-armored guards left the main hall and strode over the stairs. Upon seeing Xianxia come out, God Lord Silvermoon hastily raised his head, a look of anticipation in his eyes. Without waiting for Xianxia to walk in, she secretly asked, Xianxia, is what you said just now true? How many Heaven Punishers have you killed? How did he do it? Xianxia walked through the crowd without looking sideways. When he walked past her, he said indifferently, I just received the news that the Southern Expedition Marshal will be back soon. You have to get ready. Me? Get ready? God Lord Silvermoon froze for a moment, her brow furrowed in confusion. Hey, what are you planning? What do I need to get ready for? By the time she came back to her senses and messaged Xianxia again, Xianxia was long gone. God Lord Silvermoon's brows creased as she clenched her teeth in anger. In the moon spirit world she was a peerlessly noble God Lord, an omniscient and omnipotent God. But in front of Xianxia she felt like her intelligence had been completely suppressed, and even her temper had become much more explosive. But it was precisely this that made her even more unconvinced, and she vowed to see Xianxia's true face. Night fell. The resplendent heaven-punishing divine palace was shrouded in darkness, its luster much dimmer. The divine palace was extremely quiet, with only a few places lit by lanterns. The number of patrolling guards had decreased by half, making the divine palace even more desolate. Deep within the divine palace, in a simple and elegant study, General Xianxia stood in front of the window with his arms crossed in front of his chest. He was staring at the sea of clouds outside the window, waiting quietly. He was the only one in the study, and it was so quiet that one could hear a pin drop. At this moment, a black silhouette shot out of the clouds and into the study. Whoosh! The blurry silhouette immediately became solid, revealing a tall and dignified heaven-punishing man. This man was pitch black and had no scales on his chest, but his body exuded powerful ripples of energy. Only true God heaven-punishing experts could reconstruct their divine bodies and hide the scales on their chests within their bodies. In this way they would have one less fatal weakness. General Pointing Star was startled out of his stupor and turned to the middle-aged man. Upon seeing this man's face, General Pointing Star hurriedly bowed, a look of respect on his face. Your subordinate pays respects to the Grand Marshal. There was no doubt that this middle-aged man was the Southern Conquering Marshal. After so many years, his injuries had long since healed, and his strength had also returned to peak condition. He coldly stared at General Pointing Star and sternly said, "My race has occupied Violet Firmament Star for several years, and the situation has long since stabilized. Why did such a thing happen and turn the Zero Mainland upside down?" Clearly, Marshal Nanjianan had ended his seclusion early and returned to the heaven-punishing divine palace because of the Zero Mainland. General Pointing Star had already expected Marshal Nanjianan to be furious. Bearing the anger and pressure of the South Conquering General, he hurriedly bowed and said in fear and trepidation, "It's my fault. I didn't manage them well enough. I let the two non-humankind beings wander around and create chaos. Your subordinate is incompetent, please punish me." Marshal Nanjianan said expressionlessly, "The four divine nations, more than 300 captains and more than 10,000 elite warriors were all killed. In the end you did not even know who the two foreign race experts were. Pointing Star, if Ben Shui does not kill you, how will he answer to the warriors who died?" The lowly people of the Zero Mainland rose up and rebelled, causing the entire continent to fall into chaos. If Ben Shui does not kill you, how will he convince the people and lead the entire starfield in the future? Hearing these words, General Xianxia's body trembled, and he fell to his knees with a plop. "Marshal, please calm down. It's not that your subordinate is lazy, but the strength of the two foreign race experts is beyond imagination. During the battle at Han Long's divine capital, your subordinate planned and mobilized 130 captains and 4 generals to besiege the two foreign race experts in the ruins. However, no one expected the two foreign race experts to kill the 4 generals and all the captains and destroy all the warships. The leading white-robed youth was unharmed and only the youth was lightly injured. Marshal, those are 2 true God realm powerhouses. Only you personally taking action can kill them." Hearing this, the Southern Conquering Marshal said with a cold expression, "Xianxia, I'll spare your life for now. If you do not kill the 2 foreign race experts within a month, Ben Shui will execute you in front of everyone."